It's like,
right,
oh, that's
exactly. Let's do it, Jordan. I think that was going the other way, Jordan. And we are live. Welcome to the NBA Deeper Dive. It is Wednesday, November 13th, and boy, do we have a hell of a slate ahead of us. 8 games on DraftKings, 11 on FanDuel, still a bunch of news to wait on, and we've already gotten a ton throughout the day. It's going to be weird, so let's have some fun. Lots of value on guys whose names you probably don't recognize. That's what kind of slate we have ahead of us. Hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, hit the notification bell so you know when everything goes live, and follow us both on Twitter. I would be at Josh Engleman. He is Chris Spags and would be at Chris Spags. Don't forget the S's in the middle. You don't want to leave one off. Spags, what's up?
Thank you for that promotion, being so thorough. I think people really would appreciate that. I'm happy to be here today. I know you said you don't like the slate. I think it's a fun slate because actually very sad I didn't get to do a deeper dive yesterday. Ryan Rollins, like a total out of nowhere point guard. My favorite kinds of play on a DFS slate. A little bit of taste of April in the NBA Cup here. So he's going to be the chalk play of the day after he might not even play. I don't know if you saw his shoulder injury, like messed it up pretty bad, then hit 1 3-pointer and was like, I can't go anymore. And they took him out, took him right into the tunnel. He was done.
Yeah.
I don't think he's going to go, but if he does go, 3K minimum salary guy projected for almost 30 fantasy points. Doesn't feel too bad.
He said he was going to go. We'll see.
Oh, did he?
What that means. I mean, he said that like after the game yesterday, but we'll see. He is questionable for today. Not the only value point guard that we're going to be getting to on today's slate. That's what we've got ahead of us. I missed the ability to late swap. We have 1 7 o'clock game, 4 7:30s, and an 8, and then you're done on DraftKings. FanDuel has the benefit of 3 10 o'clock games, so very different slates across both sites. Pricing makes it very different. So we're talking about two very different things here. Yesterday was just wild. I mean, the Hawks having one of the biggest upsets in NBA history. Boston in Boston at essentially full strength. I mean, you can't make that kind of stuff up.
Jalen Johnson's a monster. I think we've been saying that for a while. It's fun seeing his growth. It almost feels like they didn't need Trae Young yesterday. Not that Keaton Wallace did much in the Trae Young vein, but they were feisty. I like teams that are just gonna fight, and they fought. And hey, what, the 4th biggest upset ever in NBA history based on the betting odds?
Yeah, it's craziness, and a much bigger value because it was the first NBA Cup game. So, you ready to break this down? We got a lot to do.
Yeah, we have everything besides the FanDuel part. I don't want to break that down.
Yeah, I don't. I get you. I get you. Indiana Pacers, 1-point favorites in Orlando, 224 total. I'm just going to say right now, I would rather bet Orlando than Indy, so take the points. For Indy, we're waiting on one big piece of news. We already know no Andrew Nembhard, no Aaron Nesmith, none of the Achilles twins. Obi Toppin's questionable, so they're dropping bigs like flies if he's not in there. We'll probably make Turner look slightly different. Maybe we unlock a couple minutes out of James Johnson. We've got some ownership coming into Indy, and it's mostly on the DraftKings side. No one's higher than 7% on FanDuel, but Halliburton's 10 on DraftKings, Matherin's 20 on DraftKings, Turner's 25, and then Pascal Siakam has a little bit. What do you like here for Indy in a still very difficult matchup?
I think the Turner value still feels a little bit too strong here at his price tag, 6,400 on DK. I haven't projected 38.2 fantasy points. Stokastic up to 37.2. So like one of the better value centers on the slate, not, semi-value, mid-range guys. I'm going to be with him about quarter of the field. That's the projected ownership as well. I think Turner in this spot producing 1.02 fantasy points per minute. Basically no real backup center. It's Siakam playing some kind of backup center behind him. James Johnson, as Josh mentioned, getting a little bit of that kind of pseudo 5 work, but it's just him if they want to go big, and they kind of seem like they have to go big in this spot. So really have no issue with Turner chalk. Certainly for a tournament, guys can beat him out at center. You can pay up, go to Towns. That can work as well. But I think Turner, in terms of the lineup construction, would be probably my cash game center pick. And Matherin, getting him about 25% as well. The thing that stands out to me with Indiana, and there's a few teams this year where they imported a few parts and all the players basically under 25% usage. I think right now the prices don't fully reflect the fact that like Turner kind of getting as much opportunity as Siakam, Matherin getting as much opportunity as Halliburton to some extent. I just don't think that price is there enough. So these guys are fairly chalky, but I think right now Turner and Matherin look like the best Pacers to me.
I agree. Turner has the highest optimal rate of anybody for me on Indiana. Benedict Mathurin is second. I would say that Siakam feels like a hair underowned, but he's just kind of like a guy that's always sitting at around point or like 1.1 fantasy points per minute. And it feels like it never deviates. So I wouldn't be surprised if I didn't really get all that much. But I'm totally with you on the Turner take. That ownership was like 40 this morning when we started, which I expected to come down. The 25% range looks a lot better to me. But tough matchup here. He's got his hands full on the opposite side. Defensively, this team is loaded. They're not exactly loaded with fantasy plays, though, for Orlando. 20% ownership coming into Franz on both sites, 17 to Suggs on FanDuel. After that, it's like 8 to Goga on DK is the only other person grabbing any love. So let's just start with Franz, who looked really good again yesterday with no Paolo Banchero around. Do you want to go back to the Franz well?
I want to be with the field on the Franz stuff at this point. I have an issue again that I've had a few times where similar price point Brandon Ingram comes up for me a little bit more because of just what's left behind without Zion out there. I know Josh might scold me for that later on because of how the Thunder completely shut down Ingram. I get that. But that said, if I'm not getting Ingram, getting Wagner feels pretty good. Got him at 22% of lineups. Feels a little bit point chasey to me at this point with the price tag coming up. But the role's been really good for him. He's been over about 32% usage on the year. In court time without Banchero, the assist rates come up as well. Actually 32% usage without Banchero. So honestly, playing great. 1.24 fantasy points per minute. Feels sustainable enough. Seems like he's getting a little more ceiling-y. So maybe at a certain point, the Suggs of the world, maybe KCP, who's been underperforming as well, reclaim something. But as it's been going, it feels like Wagner is like the key Magic player, and he's the only guy I'm getting above 10%.
I just pasted my lineups in right now so I can take a look. Yeah, I got to 17% of Franz, so right with the field. Did get a little bit over on Goga Batadze, which I'm happy now that he has slightly lower ownership. Didn't have to play the fourth quarter of the past 2 games because they weren't close. So I do think he's got a little bit of minutes upside for the game watchers out there. Don't really have anything else here for Orlando. I really don't see much that I would want to get to. Suggs is such a very different play on FanDuel with the MPE and the $400 cheaper price tag. Circling back, I did get a bit over the field on Mathurin, a bit over the field on Miles Turner, 11% of Siakam at 6% ownership. So the Indy side of that one shook out exactly like I wanted it to. And the Orlando side did too. Orlando, much better matchup here. Terrible Indy defense, but also terrible Orlando offense.
Yeah, and Goga, I feel like maybe buying all those blood in the streets after how he busted yesterday, some logic to that, but got 9% of him too, and he's really the only other Magic player besides Franz who feels materially important in the slate. Suggs still playable, but I think Batadze, like a valid play, just maybe not as much as yesterday.
Boston is a 9-point favorite in Brooklyn, 218 total. Gonna go ahead and assume that Boston has a sour taste in their mouth from yesterday. Now they're heading to Brooklyn to face this interesting team that may or may not have a couple guys. There's no ownership coming into Boston right now. Al Horford is going to be out for this one. He's sitting out for, well, technically a left big toe sprain, but we could also just call that rest. 6% ownership to Jason Tatum on DK, 9% ownership to Keita on FanDuel. I got to 13% of Tatum and 12% of Brown. I don't have anybody else. I'm okay with that. One of those guys probably smacks Brooklyn around in this spot. I don't know which one it's going to be, but I don't see a priority from Boston.
No, me either. Tatum and Brown perfectly okay, I think, though. Under the mythical 5x value, that's sort of the benchmark for looking at guys, and I'm not there with either of them. That said, Simwise got 5% Tatum, 6% Brown. Feels okay. In this kind of spot, usually I think you expect somebody to pop up a little bit more because of the lack of Horford, but Horford doing so little on the year, he sort of affects the rates for Tatum and Brown a little bit more, that they just share the ball slightly less, but not enough that they look like materially different plays. So I can get to Keita a little bit, got to 5% of him as well. But to me, it's like the Stars or Keita, and none of the parts of Boston really look that appealing, even though, like Josh mentioned, they should kind of come out firing, and maybe this is one of those outlier 3-pointer days for them, because like that was an embarrassing effort yesterday.
Yeah, it was rough. It was really rough. But yeah, obviously you can always click Tatum, Brown, White, Holiday, no problems with it. It's just not all that appealing. There are better pay up options than Tatum. There are better like upper mid tier options than Brown and White, and we're going to get to a bunch of them throughout all of this. Brooklyn is really irritating because there's a decent chance we get the Brooklyn news at like 6:59. That's going to be Q tag Dorian Finney-Smith, Q tag Ben Simmons, Jalen Martin, and Dariq Whitehead are both available via their G League team. So we'll see what that ends up meaning. There's no ownership coming into these guys. Single digits for everybody on DraftKings, 11% to Claxton on FanDuel at 5,900. I got to 11% of Cam Thomas at 6% ownership. Works for me in a GPP, especially when there's 80,000 entries. And I got to 21% of Nick Claxton at 8%, which I'm also okay with. He's been getting quite a bit of a minutes bump now, played his way back into a bit of shape, and now he's getting back to that like standard issue Nick Claxton starter role. Do you like anything here for Brooklyn? Because they are running into a buzzsaw.
Yeah, I don't love a lot here. I guess Simmons were out. It would open up Schroeder a little bit more to me. As talked about a few times here, I think Schroeder's just not the same player. When Simmons is out there gobbling up X amount of possessions per game, that could be really where Schroeder dominates the ball, sort of the alpha, at least the non-Cam Thomas alpha of this offense. So that's one to watch out for me. But right now, I'm getting Claxton about 15% of lineups. That feels okay to me. The price tag works. Producing about 1.03 fantasy points per minute. I'd have him closer to 1.15 today. Think he's fine. Cam Thomas, I got 2% of. Been kind of low on Cam Thomas overall. Know he could break a slate at any given time. I'm not sure if today is the day that I'm going to correct that too much. But he looks fine to me. Just kind of not the most exciting play because really you're only getting points. When you get points, he's going to do really well. But on a day where he's like, at least on the radar ownership wise, I don't know that I need to get there.
Yeah, I don't anticipate having much here. This is the game with the lowest pace in my model. Not necessarily the lowest total. There's two games below that. I think Boston's offense stops it from being the lowest total, but very slow game in comparison to some of the others that exist. And it makes some sense why you're seeing 20% total ownership to Boston on DraftKings and 19% total ownership to Brooklyn. It's just not a game that the industry appears to be getting to. Get to the guys that play like 30 plus minutes as GPP pivots, but I don't really want to prioritize much coming out of this one. Well, first two are in the books. They weren't the first two that we need to talk like a boatload about, so we're moving pretty good. Schedule for the rest of the day, the same thing you guys are used to. You guys got to hit the like button here. We want to make sure that we can get to live before lock. We're at 128 likes, 1,200 views. Let's bump that number up over 200. We want to give the NBA Live Before Lock guys a little bit of a present when they get here at 6 o'clock. Bump that like total up. You'll get Greg and Eric breaking everything down for an hour, taking you up to tip off of Indy and Orlando. And then we switch over to playback.tv/Stokastic. We're watching the games. If you have League Pass, link your account, come watch with us. If you don't, we have 20 VIP passes that we can hand out. We'll be talking about all of the news and late swap stuff that'll pop up over that hour. We'll watch Indy and Orlando for a bit. We'll have some sort of 7:30 game that we could switch to if we want to. We'll be talking bets. We'll be talking DFS. Lots to do because tomorrow, playback doesn't exist. There's one game. It's at 9 o'clock, and there's Thursday night football. So we'll be done until Friday again, where we'll have a lot to talk about. NBA Cup once again. But for now, playback to watch Indy and Orlando is going to be kicking off at 7 o'clock.
Baffling scheduling for tomorrow. Like, what's the logic on that?
I have no idea. It's because of the travel for the NBA Cup. So NBA Cup is Tuesday, Friday for the next month. And I think they just have to like make sure those games are set. And then you're just going to have some stupidity every once in a while to like make sure teams don't have to play like weird ass back-to-backs and stuff. So
it's kind of like when Raw used to like not try to do anything against Monday Night Football, where it's like, we're going to get our ass kicked on Thursday Night Football anyway. Washington, Philadelphia now, especially not that the schedulers knew that in advance, but
yeah. So we're putting
really
Eugene in the main event tonight.
Yeah. Gilbert defend the cruiserweight belt.
Yeah. So Undertaker Viscera main event. Chicago Bulls 7-point dogs in New York, 230 total for this one. For the Bulls, Q tag on Sanogo, Q tag Jalen Smith, which is a little interesting. Smith did miss recently, so something to pay attention to at the backup center spot for Chicago. Zach LaVine is probable. He's the only guy getting anything even remotely close to ownership. Here's how crazy it is. He's projected for 13 on DraftKings. All of the Bulls on FanDuel are at 12 combined, and no one else on the Bulls on DraftKings is higher than Josh Giddey's 3%. I have a little tiny bit of Zach LaVine. I don't have anything else for Chicago, and I don't really see the path to getting to it.
No, and the other day when you were like, oh, Chicago's going to have a bunch of guys in the winning lineup, and Kobe White went for 70 and Patrick Williams went for, I think actually Patrick Williams made the winning lineup with 35. These guys don't project well, and I think that's going to be an issue to kind of face with them, where if you want to grab a tournament play from here, anybody besides Zach LaVine looks like a good tournament play because they won't be owned. Zach LaVine, I'll have 9%, field to be at 13%. I think that feels about right for both me and the field. But everybody else here just kind of looks not great. Jalen Smith, you can keep trying to play, but there's actual values in the slate, so you don't have to get there. These guys are like kind of the bad version of Indiana, where the usage is chopped up enough. Nobody above 25% usage. They all are too high priced for what that usage is. The minutes aren't fantastic, even though they're mid 30s. So there's certain upside here. Just I don't know how you get to it unless you're just ignoring projections entirely.
Yeah, I just don't have them. Like as always, Kobe White in a GPP can happen, but he's going to be a 1, 2, 3% owned dude. You can get 8 or 9 and feel good about it and not impact your day. But nobody you're looking at the Bulls and thinking like that's a name that's the first name I'm clicking on. Or like the 8th name you click on.
Yeah.
The Knicks are different. And they might even be way more different and next level preposterous. This is another one of these 7:30 starts where we've got a bunch of injury news that I fully anticipate to come in at 7 o'clock and lead to wholesale swaps. The good news is for Indy and Orlando, we're not inundated with a ton of ownership, so the swaps are easy to do in that 7 to 7:30 window, but it is going to change the structure of your lineups if one of these things happen. Jalen Brunson, questionable. Sprained his ankle last night. We'll see what he's going to do. You always assume he's going to play, and obviously Tibbs will want him to play and play through it, but if it's that bad, if Jalen Brunson doesn't play today, that's how bad his ankle is sprained because those two guys would want to play, whether that's Brunson for himself or Tibbs wanting Brunson out there. We don't stop there, though. Miles McBride, also questionable. Was questionable heading into yesterday and played, but we're doing it again here. And Campaign is also questionable. That one probably means the least, unless Brunson and McBride are both out. Standard Orlando lineup. So Knicks, very different on DraftKings compared to FanDuel. Their prices are like, some of these guys are like 500 to 1,000 different. 20% to Bridges on DK, 25 to Hart, 15 to Brunson, 25 to Anunoby, 45 to Karl Anthony Towns. Only Brunson crossed 10% on the FanDuel side for reference sake. I've got all of these dudes, and some of them quite a bit more than the field, including Jalen Brunson. I'm over on Towns. I'm neutral on Anunoby. Got a bit of Josh Hart, which if you've been watching this show for the past 2 or 3 weeks, you're not going to be surprised by it. And I'm neutral to Bridges. I have 180% of the Knicks. They're projected for 128. It's not a very good Chicago defense on the opposite side. And these guys are going to play a ton of minutes. Everything looks good if they're in.
Yeah, ton of pace. Defense not good on Chicago's side. Towns been playing out of his mind. I like everything on the Knicks side as well. I'm really over on Towns. Got 63% of him compared to the Fields. About 45% projected ownership. Towns has been a beast on the year. 1.4 fantasy points per minute. I'd have him at 1.5 today, given the pace up and the matchup against Chicago. So love Towns here if you can afford to get there. And I think he's just underpriced by like about $1,000 right now. I know, Josh, if you care about the stuff that much, but like Towns to me, like 9,500, 9,800, somewhere in that range is what his true price should be, just what the rates are.
Yeah, I mean, it seems, look, if you can be 45% owned at 8,700 on a slate where like nothing's different for the Knicks, that kind of tells you immediately like how over or how underpriced he is, because you shouldn't ever be in a situation where a guy that plays every day is 45% owned with no injury impact to your own team. So I think he should just naturally be in like the low 9s, and that would fix a little bit of this. And it's going to continue to climb. Offensively, he's been great. Defensively, I think he just sits down on those possessions and then goes back on the offensive side. 90% allowed at the rim is as bad as any possible center could ever be.
Yeah, it's weird. They've kind of given up the entire identity of this team with the being hard-nosed defense with Towns there, but it's good for Towns. Like Towns is rebounding at a crazy clip. Like honestly, his rebound prop line seem to get higher by the day. But it's one of these things with Towns where like I've had him over projected. It felt like for a few weeks, still a little bit higher than Stokastic is, where I've been 53 compared to 49.4. But I'm seeing the Stokastic projections industry wide, like they're starting to come to where I am with it, which is great because I always feel kind of on an island when you're over projecting guys. But Towns has been great. I think he's a great play again. If he busts today, I think it'd be pretty unexpected if he were to have like a really awful game. Besides that, much like Josh, I get a lot of Josh Hart. Josh Hart yesterday at 5% ownership gave me 50 fantasy points in a few lineups. Is very happy with that. He just plays too many minutes, almost 38 minutes per game, 37.3 is projection. For him, rebounding, assists, just does enough of everything here at 0.94 fantasy points per minute with that much court time. In a pace up spot too. I think Hart to me, one of those plays with the dual position eligibility, just looks pretty strong. And Anunoby, I got 20% of. Don't have a strong feeling about that, but do have more of him than Bridges. Bridges with his rates, I've got 3% of him, so just kind of off him on this spot. Seems like he has to get going at some point, but with how he's been playing as part of this offense, not a key part of it. So it's Towns or Hart for me. And then obviously if Brunson were out, I would think Campaign would look a little bit better. McBride's already borderline playable, would probably look a little bit better too. But yeah, nope, not a lot of Brunson for me right now as it is.
Yeah, we need an injury news to really hash it out. But if everybody's in, this will be either the most exposed I am to a team or somewhere in that neighborhood. And the only reason it would really change is just because there are some spots coming up where there are guys that could be in like 100% of my lineups because of their value. So that will change the total. But in terms of like getting to multiple guys heavily, the Knicks are the team. I don't even want to talk about this one. The New Orleans Pelicans are 2-touchdown underdogs in Oklahoma City. The Pelicans are without anybody you've ever heard of. They're with everybody you've never heard of. No Jose Alvarado, Jordan Hawkins, Herb Jones, Carlo Makovich, CJ McCollum, DeJounte Murray, and Zion Williamson. I don't even know what to say to that anymore. 15% ownership to Jalen Noel on FanDuel is the only Pelican in double digits. We're seeing Brandon Boston get to around 25 on DK. Brandon Ingram is just shy of 10. And Jalen Noel is 35 at this moment. Nobody else is getting any ownership, and I think that makes sense because I don't really see a reason why you would want any of those other guys. The starting lineup's going to matter a lot here. We don't know who that new spot in for Alvarado is going to be, whether that is Jalen Noel or any one of these other random dudes that exist. So that information will be helpful. I've got quite a bit of Jalen Noel with the assumption that he plays 28 minutes today. Got a little bit of Brandon Boston, and I actually have 15% of Brandon Ingram at 8% owned. I never get this dude, and I next level hate this spot for him. But you got to get to some of these parts for the New Orleans Pelicans today.
So I feel the exact opposite about Brandon Ingram. I love him whenever Zion's out. He produces well. Core time without Zion and McCollum going back to last year, 1.43 fantasy points per minute. Usage goes up to about 37%, assist rate at about 40%. The entire thing flows through him. So like to me, I like SGA a lot. I have SGA projected almost 1-to-1 with Giannis today, which is a little bit of a hot take, but like SGA has been great without Holmgren, so that's part of that logic. If you're going to have SGA hit where he has to hit, and sure he could win in a blowout and get where he needs to go, I think you need Ingram push-pulling a little bit here. And Ingram is just taking like every possession. So Brandon Boston's kind of playing the point guard role, sort of. He's bringing it up and then just giving it to Ingram to start action. I like Ingram in the spot, but I have to give the caveat. I get Ingram all the time. I have him over projected, but I've got him at 51 today, which would give me about 50% some exposure. So
51 fantasy points?
Mm-hmm.
I'm just going to let you do what you need to do on that one, which is dramatically lower that number. That is insane.
I won't put him in every lineup, but when I have that kind of difference, and like, and again, it comes from a place where I know what I'm putting into. Like, if you know what you're baking the cake, like if you give me a cake and it looks like shit, I'm like, well, what did Josh do to this cake? Whereas if I'm making the cake and it looks maybe not like shit, but it looks like not a perfect cake, I'm like, well, I know what to put in this cake. Cake's gonna be fine. So I think Ingram, I've had him over projected for the last two slates. He had 33 at halftime last time out, 33 fantasy points, was dominating the ball, looked good. Frankly, left a lot of assists on the table as well with guys missing shots. And then Missy got kind of weird in the second half where he dominated the ball in a weird way that he never has. I think Ingram gets to 50 today. So 50 fantasy points for Ingram, you're going to get him a lot.
I think you've baked a cake fully made out of shit and then just covered it in icing so you can't tell.
It's if they don't get blown out, like I think if you play SGA, you play Ingram, and that's what I'm going to do.
I think he's going to be in the torture chamber for most of this game, not to mention the other 10 dudes that are going to put him on lock. They only have to separate the Pelicans from one player. You don't have to pay attention to a single soul on this team other than Brandon Ingram. He's everywhere he looks, there's just going to be some long-armed defensive player ruining his day. I might zero him out before I run this because I'm terrified to get to him. OKC's going to switch everything. I just don't know what he does. He just doesn't have any help.
I feel like though, so you as just like a pure numbers guy generally, where it's like, it's about the opportunity, about the usage. Like, I feel like you've yelled at people about matchup stuff like this in the past, and Ingram gets a shot up high. He's shooting from where he's supposed to. Like, he's a tall guy. He's got length. Like, he can get the shot above anybody. I think if you're going to play this game and play it, that it's somehow competitive enough, even though by the end of the game, expect it to be a 14-point differential, Ingram's probably a part of that. So I think that's the stand for me. I get you going to zero. We can go. We don't disagree this much very often, but on Ingram, it's probably going to be the case a lot when Zion's out.
I mean, the moment that I said this shit, it's inevitable that like the Pelicans win this game and Brandon Ingram has like 50 real points. But I will be singing this one from the rooftops today. It's not for me. Assuming Jalen Noel is gonna start, that will be for me. If he's not starting, then he's just a good value play. Maybe. Because at that point, who the hell knows what minutes are going to be coming in here. But if he's starting, he's going to be really difficult to get away from. 3,400 point guard, shooting guard, and not like the worst per minute guy in the world either.
Yeah, he was better in the Minnesota days. Like, I think in terms of what you're expecting him to do, like he dominated the ball there, kind of led the offense. Here, it seems like, at least so far, definitely deferring to Brandon Boston, deferring to Trey Murphy being back in, and obviously deferring to Brandon Ingram. So I don't expect him to be like the same player if people are kind of coming in expecting that. But again, with like Josh mentioned, good amount of minutes here, projected for 26.5 minutes by Stokastic today. I got him a little bit less in the field at 25% compared to 35%. I like Beasley a little bit more than I think the projections do currently for Stokastic. So that's the difference for me. But Noel, one of the chalkier plays on the slate, deservedly so, especially if he starts. Like, he'll produce out there, I think, no matter what.
Let's talk the OKC side. Obviously, they are without anybody that plays center, unless you ask DraftKings, because now Jalen Williams, center only on DraftKings. I can't think of a stupider positional designation to put on somebody. 20% ownership to Jalen Williams on FanDuel, where he's still properly small forward, power forward. 17 to Shea. It's a little different on the DK side. We got 10 for Shea. We're actually getting 10 of Jalen Williams at center, 15 for the Dort, and then 23% for Aaron Wiggins. I got to 17% of Shea, but I'm lighter on the rest of these guys. I think they're going to be mixing and matching a lot of their rotational pieces. It's a matchup that they probably don't have to go and, get into fifth gear for. So I'm probably going to be light here, but if I'm getting anybody, I'm very happy that it's Shea.
Yeah, I have SGA at 25% of my exposure right now in a 150 set. Feel good about that. Again, this is the big duel. It's head to head. It's Ingram versus SGA. It's the main event people are looking for in a day where the Sixers don't want to show up, but Brandon Ingram and SGA do want to show up for this old West style duel. So I like SGA a good amount, bits aside. Jalen Williams, a little bit under the field on him, but getting 10%. He projects well for me. The price tag at 8,100. And as Josh mentioned on the strategy show this morning, just like, why is he a center? There's really no logical reason why Jalen Williams should be a center, but he is, and that doesn't make him the most appealing play at 8,100. You're basically competing at that point with Şengün and Zubac, who also look pretty similar. So hard to love Jalen Williams on the slate. Dort and Wiggins, I was getting a little more of before the last semi ran, where I think numbers moved around. Some of the value opening up with the injuries that I got less Dort and Wiggins, but still getting 18% Wiggins, 13% Dort. So I think those guys were okay. And Isaiah Joe, I probably wouldn't point chase, but I think he's still playable as well. And if you saw something last game where you're like, Isaiah Joe, he's the big beneficiary of Holmgren being out. Isaiah Joe, I think, a fine enough play to go to, and he'll be the least owned part of it.
Kind of like that Isaiah Joe shout. I mean, he should find, like, you would expect the Pelicans defense to lose guys like Joe constantly. They should have no defensive like coordination between all of these dudes. And if you let Isaiah Joe get any sort of open looks, that shit is cash. He's one of the best shooters in the league. So I like that shout. I don't have him, but he'd be the type of guy that I'd be interested in. Certainly a minutes ceiling there for sure. How do you feel about this Jalen Williams center thing on DraftKings? Like, is that not the weirdest thing in the world?
It doesn't make a lot of sense to me, but again, he projects like the same range as Şengün and Zubac, and yeah, I don't get why they put him there, but I like DK does weird stuff like that sometimes. We're like paying too much attention, and they'll make a change like that. I think he projects okay, but like he legit looks exactly the same to me as like Şengün and Zubac do, so not really any reason to go there.
Anything else for OKC?
No, I think that's it. Just the SGA stand. I think might be the best play on the slate in terms of the upside, and wouldn't shock me again if he put up 70 again, as long as New Orleans could do their part.
Cleveland Cavaliers are 11-point favorites in Philadelphia, 217.5 total. Now, Cleveland actually has some question marks for today, and they could be very important. Q-tag Jared Allen, Q-tag Sam Merrill. I'll let you guys figure out which one of those is more important. But the Allen piece is interesting. There is no ownership coming in here to Cleveland. 13% to Mobley right now. Single digits across the board to everybody else. And I mean like low single digits. Now the Allen news will matter here. But I think we're looking at this the same way we've looked at Cleveland play basically everybody so far this season. They're kicking the shit out of everybody that steps on the floor with them. None of their starters are playing like any sort of real minutes. So they all end up slightly under projected compared to the rest of guys that are like them. And to me, it's the same situation here. I don't think any of them look all that good. They work as GPP pivots, but I don't see a single thing even remotely close to a priority. Unless we get Jared Allen out, then we'll create a little bit more value.
Yeah, I've been low on Mitchell. I've talked about this a few times on the stream. I'm not entirely sure why. I think it's the Mobley usage going up, the Garland possessions going up. It's hurting my Mitchell exposure so far this year. And he went off the other day, had some rebounding, scored a lot of points early. Still think overall, just not a player I'm going to my way to get, because it feels like he is kind of willfully deferring to these other players on the team, allowing them to get where they need to go. Because the way the team wins in the playoffs is Garland being able to stay on his own 2 feet, Mobley being able to create offense, and then Mitchell, obviously doing what he does, but not having to do it as much. So just low on Mitchell generally, and I'll be low on him again today, even though if you wanted to chase it, I get it. Mobley, I'll be closer to the field on 10%. Everything else here doesn't look that good besides Ty Jerome, who I think is a valid pivot as the value play if you want to go somewhere there's no ownership. Producing at a crazy amount, this game should be really out of hand. He's putting up 1.2 fantasy points per minute, which is crazy, but 21% usage, 29% assist rate for Ty Jerome, $3,900 salary. Just if you wanted to get away from all the chalk, let's say you have like a really chalky lineup and you have the expected Ryan Rollins and whoever else, Beasley, whatever value you want to put in. Pivoting to Jerome, I think, could be a move, but not a ton of minutes for him, so not a strong advocacy here for him, but I'll just mention it.
Yeah, I got 5% of Mitchell and 1 share of Mobley. Feels like a spot that you should sit Jared Allen and just like make sure he's okay. It's a non-cup game. You can get by with Mobley and like a rotation and a half of Tristan Thompson. Philly is uniquely set up to not be all that interesting, considering there's no Tyrese Maxey, Paul George, or Joel Embiid, and potentially no Andre Drummond, who is now questionable with an illness. I don't know if he smashed his face into a pile of guacamole or something today. Could be. We are getting a little bit of ownership here for today. 9% to Caleb Martin on FanDuel, 10% to Kelly Oubre on FanDuel, 15 to Yabusele on DraftKings, 4,300 power forward center, which will look quite a bit better if Andre Drummond ends up out. We got to get to the guy that I really talked smack about for the past few days, and I don't regret it in any way. Today, very different play, which means if I'm getting to Jared McCain today, I can confidently say he will be awful, but 60% owned on DraftKings at 4,500, 35% owned on FanDuel. The guy's going to get some shots up. There's no denying that one. I mean, I got him with the second highest points projection of anybody on Philly. But at the same time, this team is going to be bad. He's going to be going up against one of the best defensive teams in the league. It feels like now, when it's ultra obvious that we need to get to McCain, he's going to play like a guy that's been in the league for 9 games. But if we're just talking about on paper, cash game plays, incredible values, Jared McCain is at near the top of the list.
Yeah, I'm way over the field on McCain today. I've got 75% McCain, actually closer to 80%. I like him a lot here. He's producing well. He's active. These are the main things that I sort of look for when these players, like who's the good chalk, who's the bad chalk. McCain producing usage-wise, 27% usage. And for what it's worth in the game, which kind of surprising against the Knicks yesterday, like Embiid was setting him up for some shots. Drummond was setting up for some shots. Like Paul George set him up for a shot. Like they were actually getting him involved. And it wasn't just like, oh, he's out there, he's in the corner. Like he was doing some stuff. So I do like to see that as well. But the usage, the assist rate being there, 17% assist rate, rebound rate 7%, 0.99 fantasy points per minute on the year. He's just got open runway to do whatever he wants. So the issue is he's going to run into, Kelly Oubre loves to gun when we don't have the stars on the court. No Embiid, no Maxey, no Paul George. Historically, that's led to about a 30% usage rate for Oubre. So I think Oubre priced up too much to want to play. McCain with point guard, shooting guard, I've got him projected over 30. I'm scared to say the number because Josh is going to yell at me, but I got him at 35.4. Like McCain a lot at that price tag, and McCain and Brandon Ingram, Josh, are the big stands. I think your points about McCain on the strategy show this morning were fair, but like, he's been using the ball, and now they need somebody to get shots up.
I would say yes, that is too high. I don't think it matters too much. Like, sort of, even if you project him like I do, which is correct, he's still an incredible value. He's going to be a guy that's in a bunch of my lineups no matter what. I don't think, like, wholesale avoiding him is something you can do. He's got that MPE, a $4,500 price tag. I'm assuming he starts. We'll see. That could change the equation up a little bit if he doesn't, but my expectation is that he does. Seems like they're going to reward him since he's been playing, in and around 30 minutes over the past few games. I have no problem with him. None at all.
What's your
This is
minutes
a
on
very
him?
different scenario than like people wanting me to recommend him yesterday coming off the bench with Paul George and Joel Embiid in. Like, it's just, that's not going to be the path. It's a very different path today, but he is going to see if Jared Allen's out, it like sort of, not that it changes the way that I look at McCain, but it obviously gets a little bit better because the defense just isn't going to be the same thing. But man, this is going to be a struggle bus for Jared McCain. I hope he plays well. I do. Shout out to Duke.
Do you have him at 32-ish minutes? Because Stokastic has him at 32.4. So I just want to put that out there for part of my projection as well.
I have him at 30 right now. I'm going to reevaluate later. Like, I've got a decent chunk of him. I'm sort of waiting on that Andre Drummond news and everything now too. So I didn't want to go too crazy. Not to mention, I still didn't really know if he was going to be starting, and I didn't want to like extra special juice him. But I mean, he's very clearly the only priority from Philadelphia.
Yeah. And shooting well too for, that's always a concern point, but 59% true shooting on the year. So kind of equipped to take on more volume, be efficient with it. So I'll defend McCain, but you defended McCain enough too. So hopefully you've placated the angry people, the McCain defenders out there. Apparently there's too many of.
Anything else here for Philly?
No, Yabusele looks good to me, like you mentioned right now. Got 17% of him sim-wise. I expect that would probably be 3x that if Drummond were ruled out, but I think it's really McCain, Yabusele here. And got a little bit of Drummond, but obviously that won't hold if he's not playing.
There is a link in the description of this video. Prior to clicking on it, you should hit the thumbs up and run that like number up. But you can click that link and get yourself a month of whichever sports sims you're looking for at Stokastic. And the way to do it is very easy. This will cost you nothing other than what you'll need to deposit at one of our partners, whether that's at a pick'em site or one of the sports books, depending on where you live. Some of those offers might not be available to you. Multiple different offers. Could be bonus bets, could be deposit bonuses. You sign up, you follow the instructions at the top of the link. There's a ton of different options. I can see 10 of them on the screen right now. There's probably even more. Click those links, sign up, follow the instructions. You're going to get a bonus when you get there and a month of our sims for free. You could add in putting our avatar on your DraftKings and FanDuel account. If you finish in the top 3 of a contest with 5,000 or more entries, you can get another free month on top of that. You can basically see, at the very least, a month of the Stokastic sims and data at no cost, and you're getting bonuses by signing up through those affiliates. It will cost you nothing to get in the door if you sign up that way. Link in chat or the description. The Los Angeles Clippers, the LA Clippers taking on the Houston Rockets. Clippers are 4-point dogs, 214 total. Lowest total on the slate, second lowest pace game on the slate. 10% ownership in aggregate coming to the Clippers, 10% ownership in aggregate coming to the Clippers on FanDuel. These guys are completely unowned. I look at Norm Powell, Ivica Zubac, and James Harden as guys you can pivot to in large field GPPs. There's not a single priority on the Clippers, and it is not even close.
Yeah, the pace in this game kind of throws me off on these guys. I still have Harden projected well enough. Have him at 48 fantasy points. Zubac at 43.5. Like, I think these guys look okay. The issue is the price tags, the pace, all of that kind of combined together doesn't look that great. Powell's been priced up so much. He's playing well in the year, 1.1 fantasy points per minute. I've not gotten a share of him just because he's so expensive. And even though shooting guard small forward should get him a little bit more naturally, but I just don't get him at all. So I like the Clippers a little bit more, I think, than you do theoretically, but like the ownership's not there because it just doesn't look as good as other players at the same spots and similar price points.
Yeah, I got 2 shares of James Harden and nothing else. So it's tough.
Dude,
they don't move their rotation around. They don't have any injury news. It's just like the same team we get every day.
Do we think he plays up to the Houston matchup here, the theoretical revenge, when he clearly still butthurt about it, or is he strip clubbed out being back in Houston? Like,
maybe that's like his spinach, and today he's going to play really, really well. All he needed to do is just slam himself into some exotic dancers in the greater Houston area.
Just covered in sweat and glitter, and his biceps swells up.
He's gonna come out. He's gonna come out for the game today, and his whole beard is gonna be shining from all of the like excess glitter he couldn't wash out of it. Just smelling like lemon pepper wings.
Playing well on the year, though. I think I have to give him some credit.
Well, he's playing
He's
as well as he
He's
can.
not shooting well, yeah.
No, he's playing as well as he can for being the only person of value. But Norm Powell is looking a lot better for the team. He would be the interesting piece for this. Harden is just hanging on by a thread. Q-tag Steven Adams, Q-tag Fred VanVleet on the Houston side. That Fred VanVleet news will be important, but if he's in, no one's playing anything from Houston. 6% ownership to Tari Eason on DraftKings, 4 to Fred VanVleet on FanDuel. I actually got to 16% of Şengün as like a pay up to be contrarian center option, which I don't hate. But much like LA, there's not a priority on Houston unless we get news that Fred VanVleet's not playing. Ben Simmons ruled out.
Ooh.
Dorian Finney-Smith ruled out. The Brooklyn Nets are going to look a little bit different on the next refresh.
Yeah, so more Claxton, maybe more Schroeder. The Schroeder's price tag's kind of tough. Yeah, for Houston side of things, Şengün, I'm getting 12% of him. So like 3x the field on that feels pretty good overall. Tari Eason getting 10% of him. So the center slash small forward, power forward spots, I think both look pretty good here for this team. Besides that, though, Jalen Green not projecting too well for me. VanVleet, he's been playing really down this year. 0.84 fantasy points per minute so far on the year. Had a few games where he was kind of bringing the ball up a little bit more and looking better, and then it kind of shifted back again. VanVleet's been a real problem, I think, in terms of projections and stuff on the year. But he doesn't look that good to me. Amin Thompson price tag up with VanVleet in doesn't look good. I feel like all the players who we've liked the last few days aren't there, but Şengün is a tournament play. I feel like always kind of one you want to go to. Can he beat out Towns, who's going to be the chalk? Absolutely. But is it likely based on the projections? Towns looks like the better play by a good margin, worth paying up for.
I was surprised I was getting a little bit of Şengün here. Kind of like it. You know, if they're trying to match size for size, because since we know that like Zoo's going to be out there for 35 minutes, maybe that's the spot where Şengün grabs a couple extra, or maybe they just go small and spread them out. They can go either way. Just not a lot here. We need that Fred VanVleet news, because if he's out, then we can start looking at Amin Thompson and Tari Eason. The Detroit Pistons taking on the Milwaukee Bucks. Pistons 6.5-point dogs. This one looks so much different than what we were expecting earlier today. No Simone Fontecchio, no Tim Hardaway Jr., no Jaden Ivey. Very different experience here going for the Pistons. We have 25% ownership coming into Malik Beasley on DK. Cade is at 20. Both Beasley and Cade are around 10 to 15 on FanDuel. They're the only guys getting any love. 15 to Ron Holland. Around 10 for Marcus Sasser. A lot of gigantic question marks here. We desperately need a starting lineup. Figuring out who the fifth starter is going to be in place of Jaden Ivey is going to be huge. If that happens to be Ron Holland, he's the flat 3K small forward. If that happens to be Marcus Sasser, he's the flat 3K point guard shooting guard. We're going to have some crazy value here for the Pistons. We just don't totally know who it's going to be yet. What all do you want to do here?
So Stokastic has Beasley getting 30.7 minutes today. So it's hard for me to ignore Beasley at that amount. Only 0.74 fantasy points a minute for him on the year, but he looks like one of the better values on the slate to me as well. He's getting kind of the double benefit of no Ivy out there. Ivy's usage has been high, his assist rate's been high. Also not having Tim Hardaway out there after the really kind of tragic fall he had the other day. Hopefully he'll be okay. For that, like that opens up a lot of Beasley opportunity, I think. So he's the guy I'm getting the most of, getting him in 53% of lineups right now. I'm projected for 27.8 today, which is a little bit high. So Adams the club, a little bit high club that we're building today here. But yeah. Beasley, I think, looks okay for that. Holland, I think if he starts, will probably look a little bit better, getting some more of those minutes in. But to me, one of Beasley or Holland probably going to end up looking like, I wouldn't say a must play for my lineups, but certainly a high part of sim exposure today with whatever the vacancy is, because Ivy's had like a pretty big role he's leaving behind, and Hardaway too, to some extent.
Yeah, this is just a weird team. Like, I'm happy to get any Cade. That's fine. I think Tobias Harris is probably largely the same guy, although you could see it's like a slight usage bump now with no Ivy on the floor. That does create a little bit more there. But, I mean, that fifth starter is massive. One way or the other, I'm expecting it to be a flat 3K guy. And, you know, if it's Ron Holland, I'm going to be really interested just because small forward is usually the hardest position to fill. But even if it's Sasser in relatively limited starter run, like I went 24 to Sasser, it's putting him in a bunch of my lineups right now, but it's also possible that he's not starting and I walk that back to 20 and he's not the same guy. But if that's the case, then I think we're looking at Holland. Or we get what could happen here against Milwaukee, and they do it for the first time this year and have Isaiah Stewart and Jalen Duren play alongside of each other. Since it is Milwaukee, you've got the big Giannis, Brook Lopez front court. You could work Paul Reed in for a center rotation or two if you want to try to go bigger. I think that is also another option, at which point 5,300 for Isaiah Stewart. You're probably not going to get there anyway since he's center only. That would be sort of the doomsday scenario for Detroit that didn't really create any value if they end up going double bigs. But this is a different coach now. There's a reason we haven't seen it yet, I think. But if you're ever going to do it, a matchup against Milwaukee makes sense.
Also, see, is Sasser like guaranteed minutes today? I mean, I know you said he might start. Obviously, if he's starting, he's guaranteed minutes, but like he's been kind of out of the rotation like entirely, right? Like unless I've been missing something.
No, he hasn't.
Like an important part last year.
He hasn't really played it. Well, he was an important part last year because they played 97 dudes and they are all not really NBA players. So he won by default. But no, he essentially doesn't play. 5 straight DNPs at a minimum is what I have in front of me. But they don't have any other like ball handlers in his ilk other than Danish Jenkins, which I don't know, same situation here. Another guy that's made up. If they wanted to go to just having a straight point guard out there for like the first 3 quarters, I could see it being Sasser. If they want to just reward the rookie in Ron Holland, I could see that too. Or you go big. It's all really tricky, and that will be some fun swaps from 7:30 to 8 o'clock.
Also, Drummond got rolled out too while we were talking.
Oof. Yeah. Yabusele season.
It's gonna be a lot of value again on this slate.
Part of it's fun. I kind of wish we had like extended times, like it stretched to 9 and we had more swap spots, but either way, we've got a lot going on. We also have a lot going on for Milwaukee, and we don't even know if it's real yet. Q tag on Ryan Rollins. The importance of that is that he's 75% owned on DraftKings and 73% owned on FanDuel, but this is an 8 o'clock start. I would prefer to just have 100% of him and deal with my swaps as they come at that point, knowing that I'll have the flexibility to do it. But if Ryan Rollins is starting for Milwaukee again, like he did yesterday, flat 3K still point guard eligible, 3,700 on FanDuel, shooting guard eligible. It's probably the best play on the slate.
Yeah, he was a better play than Keaton Wallace yesterday, and Keaton Wallace won the money in the top lineup. So your Ryan Rollins active, shoots well. It's 59% true shooting on the year. Has spiked before in the past. Honestly, played well with the starters. Had, I think, 5 steals, I think is what he finished with yesterday. So a little bit of an outlier effort, but left in the third quarter after hurting his shoulder, put up 33 fantasy points before that. So Ryan Rollins, I think, would have probably crested past 40 if he had stayed in that game and been healthy. The issue is like he did hurt his shoulder, landed awkwardly on his left shoulder, then hit 1 3-pointer, came out right after that. As Josh mentioned earlier, said he was going to go today. So my hope is that he goes. And I'm with you. I got him sim-wise 80% of the time. I'm probably just going to lock him into lineups and figure out everything around that because I like him as a player. 3K is too low for a guy who's like about 1 point. He's actually now at 1.1 fantasy points per minute on the year. Was at 1 yesterday flat. The steals boosted him up. Rollins looks good. I'm excited to play him again.
He's in 80% of my stuff right now. Wouldn't mind if it's more by the time I get there just for swaps. We also have more chalk here. Brook Lopez is 20% owned on FanDuel because for some strange reason, he's 4,900. I don't know how that happens for somebody that plays every day. So I get it there. FanDuel, or DraftKings, he's 5,700. We're not looking that direction. We are looking the direction of Giannis Antetokounmpo, though. 50% owned on DraftKings, 40% owned on FanDuel. He was the guy that everybody wanted to get to as the pay-up option yesterday, and that has not changed in this spot. I will have him once again. Didn't go well yesterday, though.
No, that was cripplingly disappointing yesterday. Just even to watch the game, too. Like, he wasn't crashing the board, just wasn't doing normal Giannis stuff in the same way. There's a little bit of a cost concern for me where like he just doesn't gain as much usage wise in court time without Lillard and Middleton as I would have thought going through the rates. Was that like 1.4-ish fantasy, or I think 1.5-ish fantasy points per minute with those guys off, which it feels like it should be higher. That said, still usage will be there, assist rate will be there. I don't mind going back to it. It's just like I wish that there were sort of a down day in ownership for Giannis where we tanked yesterday, only put up 45 fantasy points, nobody goes there. It's gonna be 50% owned today, so you're not really gaining a lot going back that way. I think SGA projects similarly enough that I can go there, especially with my belief that the Pelicans can hopefully hang in that game. So I like Giannis, but I'm only getting 25% of him. I just want to build some different ways today, and It's like he's not as easy, I think, to click as he was yesterday, where he just worked well with everything.
Reminder, pay attention for that Ryan Rollins news. If he ends up out, I'm expecting DeLon Wright to get a pretty sizable bump and be a good value. He won't resemble the Ryan Rollins value, but he'll still be a pretty good value if it's him. They've got other options. They can make it Connaughton. They could go big. They can get really weird. They can go Green and Jackson if they wanted to. So we'll need that lineup, and that will dictate where the other value comes. But if Rollins just is in, it's going to be one of the highest owned guys on the slate, if not the highest. Wizards and Spurs, final game on the DraftKings slate. Wizards are 10-point dogs, 225 total. Nice pace. Wizards might actually be the worst team you can get to today. 5% ownership to Washington on DraftKings for everybody. 8 on FanDuel for everybody. I don't have them, and I don't have a single word to say about them. I can't see it.
Yeah, let's make up some time here. And I don't have a single Wizard either. None of any projected over 32 fantasy points on their team, DK points. So I don't want to go to Washington. Seems like not a good spot for him. Still a 10-point game, so can't assume a blowout or anything. But it's just too crowded with Kuzma in there. I guess Bub Carrington is cusp playable to me, but everything else kind of bleh.
San Antonio is basically the exact same scenario. Relatively low ownership to everybody. Chris Paul happens to be 13 on FanDuel, where he's a $5,900 point guard. That's $600 cheaper than DK. But Wemby's on this team. 10-9, center only on DK. 11-4, power forward center on FanDuel. 20% owned. I don't have a bunch of him, but clearly a guy that you want to pay attention to, and a guy that I would not mind at all having 20% of, like the field.
Yeah, the FanDuel side of that I'd be more interested in because of obviously what it means for him to have his 9 stock kind of days. But still looks good enough on DraftKings. I think a viable pivot to Giannis, not a priority for me. I'd rather have SGA, but I think for Wemby, like he can do what he did the other night. I felt like maybe a little bit of a shift in terms of the offense. Kind of was creating more offense out of the post and from the elbow than I feel like he's had so far in the year. So maybe a shot that not having Pop out there creates a little more upside for Wemby, but I'm not crazy about him on this slate, and I don't think I'll get there a ton.
Yeah. If you're clicking on a name from San Antonio, it's Victor Wembanyama, and it's probably nobody else. But this game, not going to get a lot of clicks one way or the other. Okay, that concludes the DraftKings portion of this one. We've got 3 more games to go. I also have one little thing that I want to talk about right now. Massive MMA card coming up this weekend. The return of John Bones Jones taking on former heavyweight king Stipe Miocic. It's a big one. Big UFC pay-per-view. We could reward you there. Promo code BONES gets you our MMA DFS core package for $1. That'll get you in, let you use our MMA sim, see our projections and our top fighters tool. There's a link in the description. It's also in chat. All you have to do is click it to sign up. But this is going to be good through Saturday. You can get it, watch the pay-per-view if you want, or watch it however you would like to if you don't necessarily buy it, wink, wink. But $1 to come in and put some lineups together and watch this card, don't miss out on it. Our MMA stuff is great. It has helped me tremendously. It certainly helped me 2 years ago with a big old ship. Maybe, just maybe, I can do it again here with my boy John Jones. So sign up, promo code BONES. And yeah, Mike Tyson, Jake Paul on Friday. So to light the chat on fire once again, be prepared to watch Jake Paul knock out a geriatric.
What are the projections on that fight? That's what I'd like.
The line just keeps going further and further towards Jake Paul. I assume it's just a farce, and it's like news guy told me it's like 8 2-minute rounds or something. So I expect it to be just really terrible to watch, but there's only one outcome in this fight, unless Tyson hits him in the first minute and separates him from his soul. He still has old man strength, but he doesn't have old man stamina. I can confidently say that. Jake Paul beats the tar out of him. It's going to be rough.
Trying to sell the fight. More credit to Mike on that. He's like, I'll knock him out. He's going to knock the devil out of him or whatever. So he's saying some fun stuff. So hey, I'll take
Jake Paul bought him a pigeon.
That's like a mind game, or it's like a show of...
No, it's like a gift.
Oh, okay. Well, that's nice.
Yeah, it's weird. He's like, I'm going to feed it to my raptor or some crazy shit. Fuck, Mike Tyson's insane. Grizzlies and Lakers. Grizzlies are 7-point dogs in LA, 231 total. 14% ownership coming into Jaren Jackson Jr. on FanDuel. Basically no ownership coming into anybody else, but we are waiting on the news for Brandon Clark, who is questionable, Marcus Smart, who is questionable. Vince Williams is doubtful, but we're going to get him back soon. There's not really any ownership here coming into Memphis. It's really just Triple J and Scottie Pippen Jr. That's kind of the way that I'm seeing it here too. That could change a bit. We do know that Marcus Smart is expected to play. We don't know the status of Clark just yet, but they don't look very good here against the Lakers.
Zach Edey can maybe take a flyer on, I suppose, a pay down option for the late slate on DraftKings and for FanDuel, but FanDuel probably wouldn't play it. Late slate would look a little bit better, I think, for Edey. Everything else here, I really don't have a lot of love for. Pippen's got some nice prop markets out there for assists and stuff like that, but really these guys kind of not priced to have anybody else coming back in the rotation. Jaren Jackson, not the same player as last year, but he's priced like the same player who kind of got a lot of benefit from Morant and Bane not being out there. This year, still doing okay at 1.26 fantasy points per minute, but at his salary, power forward only, I don't want to get there. Just Memphis, not the most appealing team to me, no matter what site you're playing on today.
The Lakers are basically the same situation. Everybody that's normally available is available for the Lakers, except for Jackson Hayes, who is going to be out for a bit. Don't really think that matters. I think you just, slot in Christian Coloco for backup center minutes and call it a day. 14% ownership to LeBron, 25 to AD. Nobody else is really getting any other love. You could work in Reeves and Rui if you want, but I prefer AD to LeBron since he has the power forward eligibility, 11-1 price tag. But to me, you're only clicking on the 2 stars.
Yeah, AD, I think really the main play for me here. Reeves, I don't mind in general. LeBron, I'm lower on than most people this year, but unless AD's out, but I think he's doing fine enough. But yeah, I'm with you. Like, not a lot of benefit here from Hayes being out, besides maybe a few more minutes for Davis and Russell unplayable at this point with his minutes coming down, or minutes projection at least coming down reliably.
Yeah. So I don't think anybody is shocked to hear the news that LeBron James and AD are the guys you look at for the Lakers.
Yeah, no surprises.
All right, hit that like button. We're at 318. Let's get it to 400 as we close this out. Minnesota Timberwolves, 10-point favorites in Portland, 218 total. This one looks wild. We finally got Mike Conley out for rest, which I had been expecting today. Portland, no Ayton, no Simons, and no Time Lord after yesterday's eruption. 10% ownership to Edwards, Randall, and Naz Reid right now. Not as big of a bump to the Dante DiVincenzo's and Nickeil Alexander-Walkers of the world because their prices are already sort of high. So it's really just Edwards, Randall, and Reid getting any love. Edwards and Randall would be the 2 guys I want the most here, but I thought we'd get more value and we just didn't.
Yeah, the price tags for these guys on FanDuel don't look that great to me. Late slate for DiVincenzo and Reid, I think, look a little bit better. Have them projected okay values. Nickeil Alexander-Walker is like a cheap guy to maybe get there. They'll open some things up. It's okay. But yeah, FanDuel-wise, I think Randall may be the most appealing, but nothing stands out that much to me in this spot, even though it feels like there should be more, given that they should clean up against Portland, you would think.
You would think. You would have thought that yesterday too.
Yeah,
and
but I feel like even more so now. Like that was
they lost by
like
double digits in the NBA Cup.
Yeah.
Now we get to Portland. So they're missing Ayton, Williams, and Simons. And boy, oh boy, are we opening up some value on the FanDuel side. 10% ownership to Jeremy Grant, 25 to Shaden Sharp, 20 to Tumani Kamara, 20 to Scoot Henderson, 10 to Delano Banton. You'll find it interesting to note that the ownership is not coming in to anybody that plays center. Donovan Clingan is 6. Dwop Reith is 1. Any other name you would want to click on is basically unowned. Those first couple of guys look really good, but to be fair, I actually think they're all a hair over-owned.
Yeah, Banton, I could take the flyer on if he's going to get a 24-minute projection or almost 25-minute projection. He's been such a great producer and seems to be the only Portland player that is the most fun fantasy-wise that they just refuse to play. So I'd hope him getting some run here around 25 minutes might be able to spike a real upside here, but a late slate too, $3,100 price tag on DK looks pretty good. I don't mind Scoot. I don't mind Kamara. I don't mind Sharp. Clingan, I feel like playing him on FanDuel will be kind of a fool's errand maybe. Those guys all project decently enough though. Just nobody's a runaway success here to me besides Ban's going to get that run. Ban, I think, looks like a really good value on both sides.
Yeah, 11% owned on FanDuel, 4,500, point guard, shooting guard eligible. I get it. Starting lineup here for Portland is going to matter quite a bit. Replacing. I'm assuming they go Scoot and it's Scoot, Sharp, Kamara, Grant, Clingan. That would be my guess. Which does make it scary to get to Banton at 4,500, but the dude just produces when he's out there. He's got a real fantasy point per minute rate that makes it more appealing. But anytime you're getting to a bench guy, that makes me a little nervous.
Yeah, I'm a little more comfortable with the bench guys to produce like he does at 1.38 fantasy points per minute on the year, DK points. So, but still, like that price tag, cheap on FanDuel, cheap on DraftKings. I think a fun play for both slates.
And we close it out. Phoenix and Sacramento. We've got a Q tag on Bradley Beal and a Q tag on Grayson Allen. Those two pieces of information are massive. Nurkic is back and not on the injury report. Sacramento's the same team we always know. Still no Malik Monk. Single-digit ownership to everybody on Phoenix at this moment. 9% to Booker, 7 to Nurk. But this could change pretty dramatically if some of those Q tags go the wrong way. If Beal's out and Allen's in, he probably looks pretty good. If they're both out, we're bumping up like Ryan Dunn and Royce O'Neal, and Monty Morris makes the rotation. Josh Okogie probably plays more. So we kind of need the news. But if these guys are whole, they're not all that interesting.
Yeah, I agree. Like Nurkic being back in, I got a lot of Booker yesterday. Having Nurk in there with his usage and his rebounding and all of that takes everything down enough for me that I don't want to be there. Do you think Grayson Allen just buying a little bit there today or after everybody was there yesterday and it went so poorly? I think wouldn't be the craziest thing in the world, but that's just sort of more of a game theory play. Nothing here looks that great to me, even though really no issue playing Booker and Beal if they're both in. And if Beal were out, I think Booker would look like a much stronger play.
And Sacramento's the same thing we always talk about. You're probably only playing one of four dudes, DeRozan, Fox, Murray, Sabonis, because they all play 37 minutes or more. DeRozan and Fox are both 15% owned. Murray's 4, Sabonis is 7. I do think Murray and Sabonis are a little under-owned on FanDuel, and I think DeRozan and Fox are both properly owned, but any one of those four names work in a FanDuel lineup, especially because you're leaving yourself some swap opportunities through everything else. These guys just play so much that it's really appealing.
Yeah, I think Sabonis would appeal to me the most on FanDuel, Fox, and all look good on the DK late slate as well.
11 games up, 11 games down. We ran a little long, but live before lock is next. Spags, tell the people where to find you.
Follow me at Chris Spags, and please check out my new YouTube channel at Splash Play NBA, where I do, before this video, look at my projections, which, as you can tell, I have some unique things, whether they're right or not, and, of course, prop lines, too, so go check that before this one, and a pleasure being here with Josh again, even though I'm sad it'll get you tomorrow. We're not doing a one-game deeper dive.
No, we are not.
Content ever.
Back on Friday. Guys, good luck. NBA Live Before Lock is next.
What? I'm not the pride of Iowa State. We know that.
This has become a mess here.
Yeah.
By the way, Jordan this morning on the NFL show, no countdown, doesn't say anything to Lofty and I. We're just sitting there talking. All of a sudden, goes, "Hey, you guys are live." Today he did the countdown at least, so I knew that we were coming up, but there was
God.
no notice given at all earlier today. And guys,
First show
welcome to NBA Live Before Lock, where apparently just shit hits the fan 2 minutes before the show starts because, I mean, there was already a lot of moving parts on the slate. Lots of guys who are questionable, Jalen Brunson most notably, but even other guys who are super important. It's like Bradley Beal is questionable, Fred VanVleet questionable. We knew Jared Allen was questionable. Ryan Rollins, but who the hell could have thought that Ryan Rollins being questionable would have massive impact on a DFS slate? But he started last night at point guard for the Bucks, had a great game for 2.5 quarters. He puts up like 30 fantasy points, hurts his shoulder, isn't able to finish. He's questionable. Then right before we're about to start, in addition to all of those guys, Evan Mobley also now appears to be questionable to play. It's been designated as a game time decision, which is something that usually I don't put a lot of weight into game time decision. If somebody's probable in their game time decision, I expect them to play. If somebody's doubtful in their game time decision, then I expect them to sit. But Evan Mobley wasn't even on the injury report earlier, so this seems to be the real deal in terms of an actual question of whether he's going to be able to play or not, which could be massive with Jared Allen being questionable. So Eric and I are going to be breaking all this down for you guys for the next hour. And this also seems like a great, great night for you guys to join Josh and I on playback right after this. But if you guys haven't done it, like the video, subscribe to the YouTube channel. Eric, a lot of shit has just happened. What's the first thought that's going through your mind right now?
Thank God most of this slate starts at 7:30 p.m. Eastern time. That's the first thing that went through my brain. This is just another example. You guys need to be watching the playback show after this. If you are here, if you're one of the 2.6K people, first off, we love you. Hit that like button. Thank you for coming and hanging out with us and trusting us to give you good information every single day. But that information is going to be very, very skewed based on Cleveland, Philly, because Andre Drummond's out. We're going to talk about Yabusele, the Frenchman himself. Yabusele played awesome during the Olympics. He's been pretty decent so far here in the NBA from a fantasy point per minute perspective, and somebody we've kind of waited for this kind of an opportunity for him. Well, Embiid out, Paul George out, Tyrese Maxey's been out here for a little bit, and now Andre Drummond out. Well, it looks like Cleveland might be just pulling punches and just completely punting themselves here. They're still without Max Strus, but Jared Allen's questionable. I have a feeling he's probably closer to being out. And now they're taking Mobley, where it's like, oh, you're feeling a little sick, right? And have the front court just basically become Tristan Thompson, Dean Wade, George Niang, and I think JT Thor, formerly of the Charlotte Hornets, is with this basketball team. Nope, he's in the G League. I just found that over on X. I was just looking through to see if he was traveling with the team. There's basically 3 guys who can play in the post there against Yabusele, so he's going to be in a good spot. I mean, this whole game at 7:30 p.m. Eastern time just kind of flipped this slate on its head.
Orlando, Indiana is the first game on the slate. It's one that I was getting a little bit of exposure to, and not like anything is a core option or anything like that, but I did have an overweight stance, a small one on Tyrese Halliburton. I was getting Miles Turner in 20% of lineups. I'm thinking I just take this out of my player pool entirely. This is something that Eric and I talk about doing a good amount, but we have just an insane amount of players who are questionable. Eric, do we want to punt the first game on the slate, cross our fingers, hope that nobody breaks the slate, and then just react to news as it comes and giving ourselves maximum flexibility for the start of those 7:30 games? Or are there a couple of guys who are still going to be willing to play from the first game of the night?
Greg, do you know how many times we have faded the first game of the night in the course of the first 3 weeks of the NBA season and got completely fucked because of it? It has gone so poorly for us doing that here in the early going, and it's usually the right thing to do. I think for the most part, it's the right thing to do. Again, we did get Obi Toppin in, which changes it a little bit for me because you have Aaron Nesmith who's out. Jarris Walker has entered this rotation, played 27 minutes. I'm not sure that he plays 27 minutes here, but it does mute a little bit of the upside of like a Miles Turner, where I doubt he goes out and plays like 34 minutes in this spot. I think that they'll still utilize Obi Toppin. They'll have Jarris Walker out there. I think you don't want to go completely nuts with that. Isaiah Jackson being out for the season is one thing, but the prices have started to correct with some of those ancillary pieces. It's kind of Miles Turner at the center spot, Franz Wagner, because I mean, he just showed us yesterday what that ceiling can be. And I said this on a previous show, and I was overweight to Wagner, even though we didn't like talk about him yesterday. The Sims tool just kind of gave him to me. he's live for like 35% usage going forward. Like that could be his role. And it's going up against an Indy team that we know plays up in pace, not exactly strong here on the defensive wing position. Franz Wagner has a ceiling. So I doubt I'm going to bypass him at 8,500 on this slate. There are way bigger slates and raw projections that exist on this slate. But I think Turner, Wagner, those are two guys I just won't be without. Benedict Mathurin, because the positionality is at least interesting. Tyrese Halliburton, we know he can have an upside. Goga Batadze was mega chalk yesterday, even though I didn't think he should have been with how many center plays were coming up later in the evening. We talked about that at length. But I think Turner, Wagner are like the two that I just won't part entirely with. Everybody else I could probably do without.
Yeah, I am. I'll be foregoing the first game on the slate for myself today. And there's definitely players individually that have some upside. I just tend to think with the amount of players we have who are questionable, that some of these guys are going to end up getting ruled out. And I know, at least for me, there was nothing I feel I did that was more profitable in NBA DFS last year than the times that I faded the first game on the slate. It doesn't work out every time. And yeah, you're going to have guys that are popular, or not like chalk, but like somewhat popular for the first game of the night. And yeah, I'll be screwed if a couple of those guys, if Franz Wagner scores, honestly, if Franz Wagner scores 50, I'm still okay with that. If he scores like 60 plus, it's problematic. If Miles Turner puts up 50 plus, it would be an issue. If Tyrese Halliburton scores 60 plus, that would also be an issue. But with all of these other guys who are going to potentially be available later, I want to be able to fit them into lineups. Kind of like yesterday, where if you played some of the players on the early games, yes, some of them did well. But if you left yourself flexibility to get to Robert Williams, that was by far the best thing you could have possibly done on yesterday's slate.
Yeah, and I mean, I don't really regret anything. I ended up with 90% Klingon. I ended up with 30% Robert Williams. I talked about it pretty much at length, where I thought the power forward eligibility was huge, where I didn't have a problem playing Klingon and Robert Williams together in lineups. I think the thing I regret the most wasn't pivoting some of the Klingon into Robert Williams, considering I was as high on him as what I was, and I knew the field would definitely get to Klingon, but I thought Klingon was unbelievable at 25% yesterday. I thought Robert Williams was unbelievable at 5% yesterday in the main $5. Both of them were absolute smash plays, and you can't always just look at the results in the box score and dictate what you did right and what you did wrong. And I've seen a lot of people in chat. I tuned in for like 10, 15 minutes of the last show, tuned in a little bit to the strategy show with Josh this morning. Don't look at what happens, because Robert Williams put up a 99th percentile outcome for like 21, 22 minutes. He's unbelievable sometimes, and he just destroyed and made Naz Reid his little baby bitch. But like, that is not indicative of a normal box score. The same thing with Klingon. You got a starting center at 3,100. I don't care that it's Gobert or Naz Reid or whomever playing defense in the interior there. The guy has a crazy rebounding rate. I know that DK DFS tweeted out something where it's like 20 minutes per game in the preseason. He was averaging like 7.5 rebounds in that. You put him in for 24, 25 minutes, he breaks the slate, and he's the best piece of value that you have, regardless of anything relative to ownership. So for me, I'm with you. I think always bypassing the first games, definitely in the long run, the thing to go. Like for me, I'm probably going to take out of my 50 lineups, I'll probably hand build one or two pieces into a couple of lineups as we're moving along the show, but I'm with you. I think we need to be backloading big time.
Yeah, once again, here are the players who are questionable. And we're going to add Evan Mobley to the mix. Just given, and I know I read this off 10 minutes ago, but just to reiterate for you guys, Jalen Brunson is questionable. Bradley Beal is questionable. Fred VanVleet is questionable. Jared Allen and Evan Mobley are questionable. Ryan Rollins is questionable. And then you've got other guys too. Grayson Allen being questionable. Miles McBride is questionable. That could really be important for today. If Miles McBride is out and Jalen Brunson is out, like what ends up happening in the Knicks backcourt? These are too many situations for me to really be able to predict as of right now. And I'll take the extra 30 minutes to wait for the news to come out to build my lineups, because I know the one thing I don't want to happen is for me to have, say, like a Jalen Suggs lineup and then realize, oh, I have Jalen Suggs when I could have played some cheap flat 3K min guy who's starting for the Bucks with no Ryan Rollins or something like that.
With you. Yep, totally get it. And obviously, I already see what's happening. You know what's happening, Greg, right? You know exactly what's going to happen. We're going to do the same Giannis shit we did yesterday, and we're going to get the same result, and it is what it is. But like, I don't know. I try to make the optimal decisions every single day, regardless of like my opinion of whatever. And the data is definitely going to pull us in the direction yet again of jamming him, jamming the raw points on this slate. And it is what it is. I think FanDuel, because of, I mean, there's some extreme news going in that late window. I'm not playing FanDuel today as a result, just focusing on the DK slate here, the 8-gamer. And Giannis, 50% owned. I'm going to have more. Are you going to have more, Greg? Because I think I got tits, Greg. Can you milk me?
We'll see. My current run of the Sims, I'm getting underweight to him. And it's really because, so one thing we didn't have yesterday that we have today, there weren't that many pay up options yesterday, and we had a ton of value. And then even if you, instead of playing Giannis, played Luka sucked also. So there wasn't these high-end guys that really did well. So it was a double-edged sword because you and I were texting each other some of our lineups. I had lineups where Giannis ended up being like the lowest scoring player or close to the lowest scoring player in some of them. And yeah, it was a very low percentage. Also, I don't think Glenn Rivers even knows about the rules of the NBA Cup, the in-season tournament, because every other team was playing for the point differential. And Rivers yesterday, it's a 15-point game, so he's taking the starters out with a few minutes left. He thought it maybe was safe, so he didn't put Giannis in until there was somewhere around 6 minutes or 7 minutes left in the fourth quarter. So he doesn't even know the point differential exists. But it was a bottom outcome that we could have gotten out of Giannis. Almost impossible. Oh, by the way, Fred VanVleet will play. So that's one potential value spot off the board. But anyway, the thing that's different about tonight's slate is we've got Victor Wembanyama to pay up for. We have Karl Anthony Towns potentially to pay up for without Jalen Brunson as a possibility. That's going to be massively interesting. So just because there are more viable payups, Cade being another one, because there are more viable payups, I'm for sure going to be getting to a chunk of Giannis, but I'm not currently overweight to the field just because there are a lot of other options that I could go to that I want to be getting exposure at.
Love it. I'm with you.
So
time to party.
Let's see how the news breaks. Let's see how the news breaks over the course of the next 40 minutes. We'll see what you guys have as far as questions. So right here, come on, move. I've got the stupid chat summary AI thing is blocking the questions on my screen. There we go. All right, Chris Williams gifted out 5 YouTube memberships. As always, Chris, thank you for supporting the channel. For everybody else who wants to support us, simply like the video, subscribe to the YouTube channel. Take a half second of your time. We really do appreciate it. Chris, as always, thank you for the YouTube memberships. And then Avi wants to know, are Scoot Henderson and Delano Banton playable on FanDuel, Eric?
Yes, they definitely are. I built lineups over there. I'm not playing there today, purely because that news is coming out eternally late, and will not be partaking. But Scoot Henderson had major foul trouble yesterday, and Delano Banton, he looked awesome. Ryan Rollins unlikely to play Wednesday. We'll get to that, but as far as I'm concerned, I mean, kind of everybody's in play on the Portland side. You have Ayton out yet again. You have Robert Williams now out as well, which is useful. Scoot Henderson can definitely run himself into some more minutes, and he's been better this season. I still think he sucks for what it's worth, but like I do think that from a fantasy perspective, he is more than viable on FanDuel.
Yeah, and you just mentioned it. We got some news. Giannis knee, he will play. Expected he was probable. And then we've got Ryan Rollins here, unlikely to play, dealing with that shoulder injury. So already something has happened that is going to force us to have to update our lineups here. Because I don't know about you, Eric. I was getting a shit ton of Ryan Rollins at Flatman, and I'll bet my left testicle that was the same case for you.
It's a beautiful testicle. Don't do that to it.
Yeah, that's the one that hangs a little lower.
It's my favorite.
That's the money maker.
Yeah, it's truly just low-hanging fruit. I like it.
What are we doing with Ryan Rollins being out? What is the impact here? Twofold. First, is there another value option that opens up for the Milwaukee Bucks? That's an important talking point. But then the other end of this too, what does this do to pay up options on the slate? Because we're losing one of the best value options. So does that make it a little bit more difficult to get up to guys like Wemby or to get up to Giannis?
No, I don't think so. I mean, we're going to lose him, but we're probably going to get something else that shows up. Again, Cleveland, Philly could turn into an eternal gold mine, so I'm not too concerned with it. We did see AJ Green. He played awesome yesterday. I'm not sure if you watched that game at all, but like I thought he had more than 2 steals. I was shocked to only see 2 steals in the box score. I thought he had like 8 of them just watching the game live. He was kind of in the middle of every passing lane, and obviously Grady Dick was on another planet. That guy offensively has been a joke to start off this season. But AJ Green held his own defensively. And if he can do that, we know he can shoot. Like, that's what he's out there to do. 14 shot attempts yesterday, all 14 of them from three. He's 4,900 though, so we're not really necessarily going to be going to his direction. I think for me, it's going to be, all right, if we get Delon right at 3,800 starting, I'm sure I'll get to a little bit, but 3K Rollins was obviously what we really were interested in. If they go to Connaughton, 3,900, whatever. If they go to Prince Jackson in a combination of the starting, like Jackson can do some ball handling, whatever. But my guess is that it's Delon Wright, and as such, not a huge priority for me at 3,800. I just think we have enough value already, and I think there's going to be more potentially coming where backloading the lineup is still going to be the way to go.
We've got, by the way, lots of hilarious comments in the chat that are coming in about people really liked you making the low-hanging fruit joke. People also, it seems that everybody's wife walked in just as we were talking about testicles, which hey, happens. What can you do? We got a sense for those kinds of things. But yeah, once we get projections updated, because I saw somebody else in chat, David Castillo asked, what do we do when there is news like this? How does he go about updating his lineups? Wait until the projections and the ownership update. Because if news like this breaks and you immediately go to the Sims tool and just press contest generator, run, and then the Sims run after that, you have to let the projections and ownership update, because if not, you're still going to end up with lineups with Ryan Rollins. So just wait like 5 minutes. And also, if you go to the ownership page, once you see that the ownership is updated, which you'll know by the timestamp on the ownership page, that'll be the indication to you that the projections are updated, the ownership is updated, and then you are good to go ahead and rerun everything. Sunflower in the chat said Ryan Rollins is out. Where did you guys see that? So it was Glenn Rivers told the media, this was notification that I just got. He said that he's unlikely to play today. So I'm taking that to mean that he's not likely to play. I know he's a dirty, filthy liar, Glenn Rivers, but for this particular scenario, I'm assuming Rollins isn't going to play.
Yeah, and he's got an annoying voice. So as somebody with an annoying voice, I relate.
These things are also true. These things are also true. Shout out to, you're going to like the super chat, Eric. I promise you're going to like this one.
I doubt it.
All right. Well,
based on the way you
this one
prefaced it.
Blixme1 says, took down the FanDuel 15K pick and roll. Thanks, Eric. And you don't like that. I mean, if you don't like that one, what do you like?
I didn't know. I don't always look at the chat during shows. That makes me very happy. And obviously, fuck you, Greg.
You seemed skeptical that you weren't going to like the...
Yeah, because normally it's like, oh, it's the lowest play of the day.
The guy's just trying to thank you for winning a GPP. And you're like, all right, maybe I'll like it.
And then you're just like, waka waka. Just, I don't know. I never know what's going to show up with this one. So I really appreciate that. What was his name?
It is, I don't really, it's
Blixme1.
BLKS me _.
Love it. Took down the 15K pick and roll. Thanks, Eric. I love to see it. And thank you for sending a super chat that Greg can't make fun of me with. And obviously, you suck. Eric sucks. Rocky Crabtree, you suck. How about that, Rocky Crabtree? You suck.
Eric will not take credit from you guys. He will only give himself credit.
Yeah, that's probably true. I don't know.
Also, a reminder, if you guys aren't playing with the Stokastic avatar, why not? Download the avatar. Put it into your FanDuel, DraftKings, Yahoo, Owner's Box, whatever it is you're playing DFS. Make that your avatar. So when you win a GPP, you come in first in that 15K pick and roll. You hit us up at the Hall of Fame account, and then you get your win featured. You end up getting some free stuff like BLXK, I don't know how
Bulks
that's supposed to
one, baby, Bulks.
However his YouTube handle is supposed to be pronounced. You tweet that at us, and guess what? Get yourself a free sub to the site. And you can only do that if you tweeted us and you're playing with the Stokastic avatar. So go ahead and take advantage of that if you guys are not already. And something else to be taking advantage of, Eric, big UFC card this weekend. Are you aware of this?
I am. John Bones Jones. He's back.
We do. We've got John Bones Jones taking on Stipe Miocic in a fight that honestly shouldn't be happening. It's a complete nonsense fight. But all that aside, I am very looking forward to this card from a DFS perspective. And if you guys sign up for our MMA package, you get our core package for just $1 when you sign up. Link down below in the YouTube description box. The promo code's already loaded in. But if you just happen to go to the site and need to enter the promo code, which just use the link down below. It's the easiest way to do it. Promo code Bones, get access on Saturday to our MMA core tools for just $1. Use our Sims tools, our player projections, ownership projection. You can use the single lineup Sims for MMA. If you're going to be playing some single entry stuff, just $1. And that is going to get you access for this weekend's card. So go check that out if you guys are going to be playing MMA DFS this weekend. Let's see if we have an update to our projections for Rollins. And if we do, we'll show those on screen.
Time I just think
of
it's
course,
a baseball
I accidentally
player.
logged myself out. I'm sitting there, I'm like, why can I not? I'm not logged in. Log myself
Why do you
out. All right,
suck
back in
so
now.
bad? Why do you suck at your job?
I learned from the best.
You're welcome.
It's contagious.
I was gonna say
Contagious
osmosis,
from the show.
baby. Oh, you can Hadouken. A little bit of that action. Send it over to you.
Here we go. Not quite updated yet. Will be coming out soon. And then we'll see. Somebody in chat had said, I don't know if this is true. It makes me want to look it up. Is it true that AJ Green has not taken a single shot inside the 3-point line this season?
Wouldn't shock me. I've never seen him take one. I can tell you one thing. It's like Klay Thompson circa 2012 without the layups. I will find out here in a second. I will let you know in 2.2 seconds.
Listen to this.
Oh
It is
my
correct.
God. 52 field goal attempts.
It's not a
52
small
threes.
amount of volume either. He's taken 52 shots this year, and they're all threes. That's ridiculous.
How did he get fouled at any point? He 2 for 2 from the line. Wait, how? When?
It must have been actually, I think it was yesterday. No, it wasn't yesterday. It was against, it must have been a game where he was just in at the end in a somewhat competitive game to get a better free throw shooter on the court for the foul game, and he was intentionally fouled. I'm guessing. I don't know that for sure, but that's the only way I could think it's possible.
Yeah, it's just absurd, bro. Whatever you
Because it's 2 free throws, and we know he's only shot threes. The funniest possible run out here would be the only 2-point shot he's taken the entire year he got fouled on.
AJ Green kind of looks like your friend that we hung out with from Chicago like a year or two ago, Jordan. You remember that night we went to Foreman's and Jordan Klein? You never know. Yeah, you remember? Doesn't AJ Green pull up his profile picture? He looks exactly like your friend that we kept calling Sid the Kid.
You're literally just naming a white guy.
I'm not.
It's
They
just
look so similar.
He literally looks nothing like him. It's just a generic white guy.
You guys are having an inside conversation to thousands of people. Nobody knows what the hell either of you guys are talking about. No
Hit the
other
like
news
button.
has broken. No other news has broken yet. Let's see if there's any questions.
I'm killing time
in
until we get
Discord
news.
channel.
This is what am I supposed to do for the next half hour unless we get news? What do you want me to do?
We're going to answer people's questions. We're going to talk about strategy for the show. We're not going to talk about Jordan's friends who come over and
Play
video
Xbox
games and
with
have
him.
sex on his couch while he works.
Now he's got a dog, so he doesn't need him.
Hey, I'm Drew95 wants to know who are the DK cash game plays for today. So this is obviously all stuff that is subject to change based
Yes.
on what ends up happening over the course of the next 30 plus minutes. First thing I'll say is taking out any considerations about the first game on the slate and what we want to do for GPPs. Really easy for me to say, don't play anybody in cash games for the first game on the slate, correct?
No, absolutely not. You should have 0 players in cash. In fact, there's a part of me that wants to play cash today and just like fire up some head-to-heads. Elin D4. I'm going to post some right now. If you guys want to, just because I do think this is going to be a great opportunity to just like backload everything, react to news on the fly. And again, that 30-minute post-lock show is so valuable today. If you guys aren't clicking the link and watching Greg and Josh afterwards, you're just doing it wrong. And you know how much respect I have for Josh and Greg, 0. So this is actually important and of utmost importance. Definitely be doing it.
And let's see. So players as of right, considering what we know now, these are the players who I think you absolutely should be playing in cash games. Easy ones off the bat. McCain and Yabusele from Philadelphia with everybody out for them.
Yeah, there's like 0 situations. I'd say Giannis too. Like there's probably 0 situations you're not playing those 3.
And Cat at center, I would add as well.
Oh yeah, probably Cat at center. For now, definitely Cat, but there's worlds where Cat doesn't become a must-have at 8,700 on a back-to-back, although does Tibbs have any regard for humanity on a back-to-back? No, but like we haven't even touched on some of the other injury news that exists everywhere on this slate. You could have legitimately 0 point guards playing basketball today for the New York Knickerbockers. And I tell you what, they are interesting if you have Campaign, Miles McBride, and Jalen Brunson all ruled out. I think it's very unlikely that all three end up getting ruled out, but like we saw rotational minutes for Matt Ryan. We saw Tyler Kolek light it up at times in the preseason. I mean, there's some random exotics that could end up becoming to fruition on the New York side of things. I don't know what to make of it now. It's really hard to do anything until we get that news, but like it's all going to be an onslaught of news, I'm assuming, right after lock.
And yeah, for now, I'd say play Towns in cash. And then also, if Brunson gets ruled out, then you really need to have Towns even more, despite some of the positionality there. But yeah, those are the players as of now that I'm going to call cash game locks that you absolutely have to have in. But then, you know, we don't know how things are going to change over the next 45 minutes after we get to lock. The next question that we have in here, it is Einsteinium is asking, do we lock in Doo-Wop in a smash spot? Doo-Wop Reith?
Doobie wop. Doo-wop doo-wop.
No, Doo-Wop Reith is not a lock tonight.
No, because there's some interesting humans that exist still in Portland. Like Jabari Walker is still walking amongst us. So like there's different iterations where they don't go to Doo-Wop Reith. I think Doo-Wop Reith's in play, but God, is that thin. It's still, I know everybody's butt hurt from yesterday from having absolutely nothing happen from the best value play on the entire slate. But like, you know, it is what it is. You're still going to want to get to Donovan Clingan. I don't think Doo-Wop Reith's going to be like a must, but he could definitely pull a Robert Williams. We saw that at times last season.
Yeah, Reith is okay. But also keep in mind, the way the question was framed to us is, do we lock him? No, he is far from a lock. This also isn't a smash spot for him. This is a tough matchup.
Sure is not. Thank you. You really wanted to let us know that, didn't you, Jordan? Like, that was very important to you. Honestly, I didn't even know if you still like worked outside of like just turning your camera off and just clicking buttons from the toilet.
What's wrong with working from the toilet? Let's go over some of the Milwaukee options now. So we now have projections updated for the Milwaukee Bucks. Here's what's changed. Delon Wright is now a viable value option. He's not nearly as good as Rollins as a value play. He's more expensive, and he doesn't project quite as well. But with that said, 22.66 fantasy points at $3,800. That is the DraftKings projection for him. And then over on FanDuel, he's 4,200. He's projected for 23.7 points. He projects a little bit better on FanDuel just because of the defensive stats that he brings to the table. We're only talking about one fantasy point, but in case people were wondering why it is that Wright would project one fantasy point higher, it's because of some of the defensive stats he brings to the table. It's another good value play. It's not nearly as good of a value play as Ryan Rollins, but he's in play. He's somebody who I assume when I rerun everything, lend in like 15 to 20% of lineups or so.
Yeah, I mean, he's a better play than AJ Green. He's a better play than Taurean Prince. He's a better play than Andre Jackson. Woo, he is for real. There's definitely a lot of guys that we could look at from Milwaukee that you could like have one or two in a 20 max. You could have a couple percent in 150, but like there is nobody who's a priority whatsoever, even Delon Wright. And we put him for 28 minutes, 0.8 fantasy points per minute, basically. 23 projection. That could still be nothing relative to other pieces on the slate, pending what else drops. So like, yeah, Delon Wright in play now. Probably nothing else that I really want to get to as I'm just looking through it from the value side of Milwaukee. It's going to be Giannis or bust. I mean, Giannis is just still the smash that he was yesterday. Let's just hope he actually, I'm not even asking for a smash, bro. I'm asking for like a normal projection day because that would have been ridiculous yesterday.
Let's see what we have for other questions. No, last super chat was still just the guy thanking you there, Eric. And then we had another question here from Gator Nation. He wants to know, can you go over how to fade the first game in The Sims? Yeah, the most accurate way to do it is to build out your contest pool and then go to any of the players who you're getting exposure to, and you could do negative ROI boost. If you want a really simple way to do it, you could go to the team controls that Jordan has on screen. See at the top, the team controls, Jordan.
That's what I'm doing for what it's worth. Yeah. team controls, and you remove both of those, because for me, I'm going to be late swapping, and everybody's going to be late swapping. So it makes it easy.
You could just press the minus button on the Pacers and the Magic. And then if you were to rebuild the pool, it would have all those players out. This isn't going to give you the most accurate representation of the field, but if something happens and you're strung for time and you don't want to have that game in your player pool and there's just a few minutes left, which is a legitimate thing that happens in NBA, this is a quick way to take those players out. And it's not going to give you as accurate of a contest pool as if you do the negative ROI boost. But if you only have a couple minutes left to go into lock and you don't have the time to do the negative ROI boost to all the players, that's the quick and a little bit easier of a way to do it. Starting lineup for the Pacers tonight: Halliburton, Shepherd, Mathurin, Siakam, Turner. So we've got that there. Some super chats. Mark Nugent wants to know, are we fading the first game of the slate? I am. Yes. Eric is playing some of it, but not a ton.
Yeah, I'm going to hand build in a Franz Wagner, a Miles Turner share or two into my 50 lineups, but I am probably not going to go beyond that. I did remove him from team controls, mainly because the one thing that we can do now in the late swap is we can have an exact representation. You can go to the exact contest. It's going to upload from DraftKings. If you're only playing DraftKings like me today, it's going to give you the exact representation of what the ownership ends up being. So I think it's kind of like a waste of time right now with as much news as showing up to like constantly go through negative ROI boost. I just removed it entirely because I know how much is going to change. And then I'll get the exact ownership numbers on that first game, just because we have each individual contest. If you're playing in like the main iteration, like the $5, like I am, you can just basically click on that contest, get those numbers, know that it's 25% for the number that you're going to end up calculating out of it, and then go into, actually, it's more than that today. It's 30%. But anywho, I'm looking at like what I'm potentially looking at for swaps. I'm going to get the exact representation of that first game and then just build later.
Next question here. It is from Kyle Hodgkins. Kyle wants to know, Banton or Sharp on FanDuel? All right, so between Banton and Sharp, it is so close in our projections. We have, listen to this, Delano Banton projected for 25.07 fantasy points. Jared Allen expected to play, by the way. Shaden Sharp projected for 24.88. So it is very, very close. I mean, we are just within a tenth of a fantasy point between these two guys. Let's see, is there an ownership gap between them on FanDuel? All right, so ownership, the projection's really similar. Then I'm going to say, is there somebody who's lesser owned between the two? And then I lean towards whoever is lower owned. And we've got Banton at 13% ownership and Sharp at 25%. So projection being about the same between the two of them, but Shaden and Sharp pulling about double the ownership. Go to Banton for the lesser owned of the two.
Love.
Do you feel any differently about
that? Dude,
I
think Banton's better than Scoot Henderson, and I've been banging the drum to at least have them give him a shot in the rotation. Yesterday it happened by default because Scoot Henderson got in such early foul trouble, and I was the unfortunate person who had to watch my entire Minnesota Timberwolves just get crumbled. And then, of course, that's like the first bet I've had on Minnesota all year. So bad things were happening for me. But I look at my lineups on FanDuel. I just reran some stuff here as you were talking. And I like Delano Banton more. I think he's a stud, and he's 27 already. He's kind of like aged up a little bit. And I think that's the main reason that Chauncey Billups and company, they're going to keep playing Scoot Henderson over him. But yeah, comparing him to Shaden Sharp, I like the opportunity for Banton coming off the bench to avoid at least one of those two in the 5-man rotation.
Yeah, to me, just the tiebreaker. It's the lower ownership. And let's see, I need to do another run of lineups here to see what I end up getting to and see what ends up showing up. I'll point out any kind of major differences that end up showing for me with Ryan Rollins now being out of the mix. Are there any other questions that we need to be getting to? Here we go. Stokes wants to know, do we completely smash Giannis like last night? There are a bunch of pay up options on the slate to be getting to. I talked about this a little bit at the top where in terms of just projection, yeah, he is the number one overall guy. If you're playing cash games, certainly go ahead and play him. I'm going to be playing some of him in GPPs, but I am not going to be locking him in the same way when you consider that we have Wembanyama, we have Karl Anthony Towns. There's so many other options to get to, and Giannis is also so popular, pulling right around 50% ownership, that at least in my last run of Sims, and I'm doing another one now to account for some of the more recent updates, I was underweight to the field on Giannis. Not massively so, but I just didn't have him in more than half of my lineups because I was spread out among some of the upper end guys. Maybe that changes a little bit with Ryan Rollins out of the mix, but I don't think so. Who is your favorite overall pay-up option in the slate, Eric? Is it still going to be Giannis today, or is there somebody else you think you'll have more exposure to?
No, it's all on. I mean, I don't see how it's anybody other than Giannis yet again. It's so hard. I mean, we've got him in for like north of a 1.85 fantasy point per minute rate potentially, and he looked pretty uninvolved at times yesterday. It's yet just I don't care. Maybe that lowers his ownership here. It's Detroit on the other side. It's just like facing Toronto. It should be as easy as possible as you could possibly run into here. I do think there are at least other options that we can get to, whereas yesterday that wasn't really the case, and that's why he was like 75% in the mini max, 59% in the $5. Just absurd chalk there, but it was understandable. Today, I think you at least have Wemby that you can get to. You have SGA that you can get to. On FanDuel, you have a lot of different options that you can get to where you can go away from a guy who's pulling 40% ownership a lot easier when you have Wemby power forward eligibility, Anthony Davis power forward eligibility, SGA, Tatum, LeBron. Like there's just so many different paths and avenues to possibly get away from it. I'm not saying to do that, but if I were playing FanDuel, I'd at least be able to consider other options. For DraftKings, it's still going to be honest for me.
So we have 3 players that I consider to have immense 4 players I consider to have immense upside on the slate. And those 4, I agree. And it's not to say there aren't other players with upside, just there's these 4 guys who have put a different tier of upside. It's Giannis, it's Wemby, SGA, and Cat. Cat is partially because of how well he's played for the Knicks. The other part too is with Brunson being questionable. If Brunson's out, then I mean just Karl Anthony Towns to the moon here. The ownership on these guys, you got Giannis and Cat both around 50%. Then you got Wemby at 20% and SGA at 11%. So of all those guys, I actually have the most of Wemby now just because his ownership is so modest. And then relative to ownership, I'm underweight to Cat. I'm underweight to Giannis, even though I like both of them, get them in a good amount of lineups. I just don't have them more than half of my lineups. So I'm overweight to Wemby and I'm overweight to SGA as well. I think SGA at 11% ownership, no Chet there, and that small ball lineup they ran out last time. They've got a good matchup against the Pelicans. The big fear with SGA has to be the blowout risk because the Thunder just don't seem to play competitive games with anybody. They run everybody off the court. But I think SGA goes way overlooked by the field on a slate with this much value.
I definitely see that. Again, he's a great option to get to. You don't have Chet there. Chet had played awesome in the early going of the season. It kind of muted the extreme MVP case that people were going to probably end up making if we had last year's version of SGA. But Chet took such a step up. Without Chet on the floor, and with Williams having to play the 5 on the defensive end right now because they're going extreme small ball, SGA is going to get all the usage and all the land. And we're going to see some, I mean, 45, I was kind of shocked to see 45 was his career high last time out, aren't you? Like, I thought he for sure had a 50 burger at some point because you think of how many Dame has had, LeBron's had, guys like that. And it's like, weird that SGA had never gotten above 45 or gotten to 45 have it. But I'm with you. I think SGA is an awesome option to potentially get to. It's going to really depend what other value shows up. We'll see what happens with Evan Mobley if he ends up playing. It's weird with Jared Allen in now. I'm not sure what could show up. I'm worried that it ends up just being Dean Wade back in the starting lineup and then nothing looks great because he's such a bad fantasy point per minute guy. But the Knicks news is gigantic. We have still some pieces that can fall depending on starting lineups, specifically Milwaukee, looking at them and what could happen. Detroit on the other side with Marcus Sasser, somebody who's showing up a ton in the Sims right now. There's still enough value where I think getting to some SGA is still going to be something I do alongside Giannis no matter what.
Yeah, I would be really surprised if it's anybody other than Delon Wright starting at point guard for the Bucks.
Me too.
But there's been multiple times this year that we've tried to predict starting lineups, and teams done some weird stuff with their starting lineups this year. Most notably that Warriors lineup where Kuminga had been starting the entire year. A bunch of guys were out, and then all of a sudden Kuminga wasn't starting. So definitely don't want to make any promises about what these teams will do with their starting units. 14 minutes to go into lock. Let's give the people the nuke of the night, Eric. Do you feel like we have enough information to at least give people a nuke of the night out?
I've got a guy.
All right. So let's do it. Jordan, play the animation. We had a good run of nuke of the nights last night. So let's run it back. Let's see what we come up with today. Nuke of the night. We had a couple of good ones last night. Eric was on Time Lord last night. Robert Williams, he went with for the nuke of the night. I was on Bradley Beal. Beal himself had a really good game. So we batted 2 for 2 yesterday. Couple of good options for us on last night's slate, Eric. Which direction are you going in today?
All right. So this is kind of a sprint slate, and I'm making some educated guesses on what's going to happen as far as news breaking, trying to figure out like somebody that has upside that's still going to be a part of your lineups no matter what. Like Delon Wright, I think, is off the table because I think once he's starting and thrown out there, that's definitely going to be something. But I don't think we end up seeing Jalen Brunson out there today. That's just my opinion. Like we saw him sprain his ankle at the beginning of the second half yesterday. And I do think we get Miles McBride playing. And if Miles McBride is playing without Jalen Brunson, I want 100%. 4,300 Miles McBride. I think he's pretty interesting, even if you do have Jalen Brunson out there. And of course, Miles McBride has a Q tag. So this is obviously a nuke of the night with an asterisk as is. But I just want it to be known that against Chicago, the fastest paced team in the entire NBA, and with the amount of minutes that Tibbs is going to throw these guys out there, it's the one team we haven't talked about yet, and it's probably the team I'm the most interested to see what happens to their ownership after lock. I think Josh Hart, Mikal Bridges, OG Anunoby, I think they're all awesome plays, even on this back-to-backs, because Tibbs doesn't care, and Karl Anthony Towns could look exceptional if you have Jalen Brunson off the floor, but I have to repeat, if it's like you're trying to build out your lineups after lock, and we get Jalen Brunson out, not playing nearly 100% of lineups with Miles McBride, especially now that we've lost Rollins from Milwaukee, we're talking about potentially the most important value piece that could exist on today's slate. So as you're thinking through your lineups here, I think the default option that you should always have if you're trying to get to some tournament plays, if everything's looking really chalky, is identify minutes. And that's the Knicks pretty much through and through. I'm going to have a ton of interest no matter what happens with this team in tournaments. But especially if you get Jalen Brunson out, Miles McBride would be your nuke of the night.
Do you remember? I know the answer is going to be yes, but I'm going to bring it up anyway. I'm going to pose it to you the question this way. Do you remember the minutes Miles McBride would play as a starter last year?
Like 40.
48 in some games. There was game Miles McBride is an unbreakable record. There's no chance this will ever be broken. There was a game last year where Miles McBride came off the bench and played 47 and a half minutes. Do you remember that?
I do. And I probably had 100% of the time, every single time, because he was just unfadable. He'd be up at like 6,500. And I'm like, you just play.
You played 100% of Miles McBride the day that Jalen
on so
Brunson
many
got
slates.
Hurt.
Oh, the day Jalen Brunson. Oh,
yeah,
no, not that one. Not that one. No.
Miles McBride came off the bench one game and played 47 and a half minutes. What happened is Jalen Brunson on the first possession of the game ends up getting hurt. I think it was a knee injury, if I recall correctly. It looked really bad. It was a non-contact knee injury. It seemed like it was going to be devastating, but he ended up being okay. So Miles McBride checks in on the first possession of the game for Jalen Brunson, and Tibbs never took him out. He played the entire game. So you had a guy, it's an unbreakable record, 47 and a half minutes for a guy who came off the bench.
Fade their picks and cash. It's that simple. Yeah, Deuce is great. If you don't play 100% Miles McBride if Jalen Brunson's out, I really don't know what to tell you. Like, Miles McBride also has a chance to sit, and then we have to have like the Kohler discussion. I have no idea what I'm going to do in that situation. Like, I think Josh Hart can play some point guard. We've seen that at times where they can go point Hart. Karl Anthony Towns is a decent enough ball handler, and with Chicago, with Vooch in the front court, Vooch would basically just sag back, and Karl Anthony Towns would probably be able to bring the ball up the floor. Like, there's a lot of ways that New York can go away from Kolek if they don't want to end up playing Tyler Kolek, but I really like Tyler Kolek as an actual real-life basketball player. At Marquette, that team was in shambles last season without him, and I kind of just watched college basketball from the rafters during the course of the entire season. Fade, in college basketball DFS, some of the most popular guys on certain slates where they end up even more popular than on NBA slates at times, but Tyler Kolek was a wagon. That guy is a stud, and he's tough as nails. Like, I think he'll be something for New York eventually, but yeah, it would take probably all three to be out to even have that conversation. Cameron Payne, Miles McBride, Jalen Brunson.
I tip my hand a little bit in terms of who I'm going to. To me, though, it is a little bit crazy that you get Giannis and Towns 50+% owned, and then Wemby being around 20%, and SGA right around 10%. I think the easiest way to differentiate your slate, your night on a slate that has close to unlimited value, is pay up for somebody different in the field. That's where Wemby and SGA fit into the equation for me. I like paying up to them and making them as pivots off of guys like Giannis and Karl Anthony Towns. If we do end up getting Brunson being out, then Towns probably ends up in like 80% of my lineups. But as things stand right now, I'm a little bit underweight to Towns. I'm a little bit underweight to Giannis. And then I get overweight to both of SGA as well as Wemby in turn. So that's the direction that I like going to differentiate my lineups for today. And then also, it's not that hard to have lineups that pay up for 2 studs today. I don't know how many of your lineups you've really closely looked at and seen what the structure is of some of the pay up options, but I have lineups that have Wemby and Giannis both in them.
Yeah, so I guess my question is, if Marcus Sasser doesn't start, do you still feel good pulling the trigger on him at like 50, 60% of your lineups?
I don't think he is going to start, and I don't have him in nearly that many lineups.
Okay. I'm just curious because I'm just running the Sims kind of unencumbered right now, and it's has all the Marcus Sasser and all the land. I think how much I have of the two of them is going to dictate what I do with that piece if some of the news breaks a certain way or a certain direction. But kind of what I'm doing, I'm basically just fading the entire first game now. I have like 1 share out of 50 of Franz Wagner, and then we'll see what happens. We'll see what happens with the news. I would imagine there will be lots of situations where I have Giannis plus SGA in a bunch of them.
Yeah, and I have Sasser. I still think Sasser is a if he does end up starting, then I'll end up with more of him. I have about 20% of him right now.
Yeah, don't mind it.
But we'll see what the starting lineups look like and what other value ends up opening up as well. Because if you get the smash spot for Miles McBride, he's in, he's starting, Jalen Brunson's out, and that changes the dynamic of how some of the other value options look because he would rise to the top pretty damn quickly in that kind of scenario.
We got to rise
we don't have any other questions in Discord, but we do have some super chats that came in. So let's answer these before we get to the end of lock here. And first one is from Jay. Jay wants to know, Eric, do you like a Caden Giannis PRA on underdog? He doesn't specify whether it's the over or the under. I have to assume he means the over.
Okay. I have Giannis for 34.5, 10.5, and 7. So that is 34, 10.5, 44.5. Yeah. So I've got him like 52.5, 51.5. I doubt that that's going to be a play for me because I think he was at 53.5. I mean, if anything, I'd be leaning towards the under of that. 34, 11, 45. Love doing math on the show. 52 basically is where I've got him at. Ryan Rollins officially out. So that's good to see. And then SGA was the other one.
It was Cade was the other one.
Cade Cunningham. Okay. I've got Cade for 25. And again, these are mean projections. We can have an entire median mean conversation. I'm just kind of doing the quick hand version to give you an idea of where I'm landing. And if you like the under already, you should jam the under if it's like 2 or 3 points difference, but I don't think it's going to be on either of them. Cade Cunningham, 25.5, 6.5, 8.
Oh my, Bobby Portis out.
What the fudge? Okay, cool. That creates value on Milwaukee. All right, let's do this.
Portis wasn't even on the injury report.
Yeah, this is dumb.
This is something
Glenn
else.
Rivers sucks.
As ridiculous as it sounds, this is going to raise the projection on Giannis a little bit now.
Yep, and Gary Trent probably enters the conversation, even though he's been like dead to the world. Because you're going to want to get shooting out there. You can go Brook Lopez, Giannis, and you can just play a majority of those minutes. Andre Jackson, Taurean Prince. You know what? Actually, this is going to be really, really frustrating because like nothing's going to project out exponentially better. And Gary Trent's played like 8 and 6 minutes the last 2. So I doubt he ends up being like somebody who takes on more of it. I think the guys who benefit the most are just these guards that, you know, we were talking about, hey, Delon Wright, fringe play. I think it kind of solidifies his minutes, even though it's a completely different position, no?
So the problem with Gary Trent, it's not Gary Trent himself as much as I think there's ultimately going to be much better value on the slate. That's going to prohibit me from getting to him.
Probably, yeah. Andre Jackson, probably the guy who benefits. He returned to the bench. I think he'll probably continue to come off the bench here. Jalen Brunson will play. So Nuke of the Night amendment will be coming before the end of the program. Deuce McBride will play. God, why is Jalen Brunson playing with a sprained ankle? And Campaign will play. This is a disaster.
All right. Yeah, we just found out, like Eric said, Jalen Brunson will play. Deuce McBride will play. Campaign will play. This makes McBride no longer an appealing option, correct?
Correct. Deuce McBride, I'll have like maybe a percentage or two. My Nuke of the Night amendment, I will
You
go
don't.
to.
You don't have to make an amendment.
Okay. Yeah. There's no Nuke of the Night. I apologize. May God
If you have
mercy on my
another
soul.
GPP play you really like instead, you could shout it out. But we need the full. We've got other super chats that have come in that we have to answer. We only have a couple minutes for. So
Cool.
Jeremy Doyle is asking, is it okay to play Giannis, SGA, Shaden Sharp, and Delano Banton all in the same lineup on FanDuel? Yeah, that's not an issue.
Yeah.
And then Dan says Eric is a top tier ball handler. No. He's more of a bang around in the paint kind of guy. He's a load. He's a big dude.
6'2". I'm not that big.
Yeah. Eunice.
Hell yeah, brother.
Dan says top tier ball handler. He's calling you a point guard. Or maybe a tight end. Who knows? Let's see what else we have. Just about a minute left to go here, Eric. This isn't going to be the final. I have a version of my lineups uploaded for today. Things are going to end up changing post-lock. Anything that you are noticing about the lineups you're uploading that maybe you didn't expect or something you want to shout out to the people before Josh and I head on over to playback?
I'm going to play way too much Jalen Brunson. Your new Nuke of the Night. Fine. Jalen Brunson, 8,600. Tibbs has no regard for humanity. I doubt he plays like the 40 minutes that, you might expect in spots like this. You got Campaign and Deuce McBride behind him there, but he hasn't been as good. I mean, part of that is just usage going towards Karl Anthony Towns this season. He's averaging, 24.5 and 34.5 minutes per game. They've had some weird, wonky scripts in some of these. I mean, they blew the doors off Milwaukee, blew the doors off Philly yesterday, blew the doors off Indy, got the doors blown off of them by Boston in the opening night. So we've had some wonky ones, but God, I have a lot of Jalen Brunson at 8,600 as I reran stuff.
Yeah, we're going to find out very soon what the projections and ownership updates are for the absence of Bobby Portis to the Milwaukee Bucks. Oh, we actually already have it right here. Here's what we're going to do. This show, it is ending in a second. Josh and I are going to be heading on over to playback. One thing I want to let you guys know about, I'm doing this piece of content on Twitter. I've been doing a bankroll building thread, and the way I'm getting all of my plays for that thread, it's just projections from the Odd Shopper portfolio EV tools, which are currently on sale for $1. So if you guys have been trying to get into sports betting, or if you're just looking for, maybe already into sports betting and you're just looking to be more profitable, check out the Odd Shopper portfolio EV tools. Just $1 when you sign up. There's a link down below in the YouTube description box. Promo code there is bankroll. You enter bankroll, you get access to for 1 week for $1. All of our results are completely open, transparent. You could click on the portfolio Viva results tool and you can see what all of them are. You're not going to regret it. This is something that's a really easy and invaluable tool to build your bankroll. And then another thing too, when it comes to sports betting, there could be as many as 300 bets per day that show up on Odd Shopper. If you bet really small dollar amounts and spread it out across different things, it's a really good way to diversify as well. Makes betting a little bit safer and less variance, even than something like DFS. So if you guys want to check out those tools, it's just $1. Check that out down below. Over on Playback, Josh and myself, we're going to be breaking down the slate and all the news that's about to break. So come join us on Playback. Jordan, drop the link because I'm seeing everybody saying, where can I watch Playback? The link is there. You click on that link, you go over. Josh and I are going to let you know all of the updates that come in, and we're about to read off the Bucks projection updates as well. So come join us in Playback. Have a good night, guys, but see you on the other side.